Sabrina, are you ready? Just waiting for Jared.
Yep, we're good.
Okay, okay, Stephen.
I have 6:30 and call to order the.
Oh, you got to talk into your microphone.
Yes, I did. Thank you. So again, I got 6:30. We'll call to order the Board of Public Works for Tuesday, November 2nd. We'll start with the roll call. Mayor Kim Smith.
Here.
Alder Jim Olson.
Here.
Jared Holter.
Here.
Sabrina Steger.
Here.
And Alder Steve Knott is myself. I am also present. We have Diane Wolf and Dan also is here. So Dan Stevens. So we'll get that in the minutes as well. I don't see anyone else. Okay. Item number 2 is consideration and action on minutes from the previous meeting.
I move we approve.
Second.
We have a motion by Mayor Smith, a second by Alder Olson. Any discussion? All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion passes. Number 3 is public input. For public input, each person wishing to provide public input is limited to 3 minutes. Please state your name and your address if you decide you would like to do public input. Is there anyone here who would like to do public input? Please.
One second.
That's right. That's right. That's right. Start again.
Okay,
Go ahead.
rerun. My name's Joanne Wickheiser. I live at 1024 Oak Avenue North in Onalaska, and I'm here on behalf of area pickleball players who play at Oak Park, and it's one of the busiest parks in Onalaska. First of all, a huge thank you to Onalaska Park and Rec for giving pickleball players a place to play this game that we love for the past several years. First of all, it was at Park Ridge Park with painted on lines, and especially now with the dedicated courts at Oak Park. We really appreciate the support we've gotten over these last 5 or 6 years. Pickleball is a great exercise for all ages. Currently, we have players ranging in age from teenagers to late 80s. So we have a great group of all ages, and it creates an opportunity for lots of social interaction as well, which is really important at any age. There are a number of reasons why those of us in attendance tonight and so many other pickleball players support the proposed resurfacing and addition of 2 courts. In addition to, raise your hand. We got a lot of other people too. But anyways, first of all, there are a lot of cracks developing on the court, and they're continuing to get larger and beginning to affect play on the courts. It's not unusual to have 25 or 30 players show up on any given morning with room for only 16 of us to play at one time. Courts are also busy in the afternoons and most evenings. We often welcome out-of-town visitors who have found our courts online and come to play at Oak Park. Area players, those of us here and many others, will continue to provide their time, talent, and items to improve the courts. We've provided benches and tables for seating for waiting players and have purchased windscreens for the courts, putting them up and taking them down each season. When leaves and other debris make the courts difficult to safely play on, we bring brooms and blowers to clean them off. Just this past summer, our Learn to Play clinics welcomed over 50 new players who were eager to learn the game, and we certainly invite anyone here to come and join us. We host other special events during the season, round robin challenges for different levels of play, ladder leagues. All of these have attracted more players than we have room for currently. And lastly, we've always tried to be respectful of the neighbors who are near the courts. We delay our starting time so we don't start too early in the morning. We don't park on the street. And we take good care of the park, we think, and we're glad to do that. So in conclusion, resurfacing and adding those 2 extra courts at Oak Park would not only improve the deteriorating conditions there, but would alleviate the waiting for courts and the people sitting around waiting to play. I urge the Board of Public Works to conclude this worthy project in the 2022 capital improvements budget. And thanks for listening.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Anyone else like to provide public input? Second call for public input. Dan.
It'll just hold it like this. It's designed for short people. My name is Dan Steve. Thank you, Mr. Chair. My name is Dan Stevens. I reside at 1708 Jennifer Court on Alaska. I'm also a second district alder. And I'm here looking to provide some input regarding the capital improvement budget. I would suggest or implore the board to bring to council a budget that was concurrent with the recommendations of the finance director and shoot for 3 million or under. And to that end, I'd noticed in the public works section, so far included or that did not make the cut was items 14 and 17, which had a PACER rating of 2.3 and 2.0 respectively. That is more dire and in more serious need of attention than the $1.29 million project with a 3.3 rating, which is not great, but it's not nearly as bad as the others. One of the challenges before this body is you get $9 or $10 million worth of requests, and we have to do something that fits with our budget. This year, I think it kind of behooves us, given the cost of goods, that our borrowing dollars are not going to go as far. It could be a time that we should consider cutting back. That's not a policy that we should have eternally. For example, last year we bought the new fire truck at the cost of $1.2 million, and it turned out that that made a lot of sense. With the rising cost of the fire trucks, we actually saved $200,000. Going forward, however, I think that we need to cut back, and I would recommend either doing item 14 or 17 singly, and the second option would be to do both. So in conclusion, let's shoot for a lower borrowing base, which would benefit the city of Onalaska potentially for the next 20 years. It would put us in a stronger financial position. So with that, good luck. Thank you.
Thank you. Again, we're still on second call for public input. Third and final call for public input. Public input is closed. We'll move on to item number 4, and that is the sanitary sewer charges for Terlingua Heights. Jared.
Thank you, Alder Knott. In your packet tonight, I have included a variety of materials for the Terlingua Heights manufactured housing park that is on Oak Avenue within the city of Onalaska. Steve Hoffman is the representative, and he is in the audience tonight. And if the chair would so like, we'll invite him up in a second, but I'll give you a little overview here. If you go to the second page, you can see their third quarter utility bill. They received a utility bill of $15,498.66. They are one of the biggest, largest water users within the community. Their facility actually is metered at the Oak Avenue South, so they have a master meter that the city owns. So if you go to like about the third page behind the staff report, you can see a map of Terlingua Heights. The water mains that are within the park and serve each unit are private and owned by the Terlingua Heights themselves. So the city supplies water to the master meter out in the street, and then the water goes into the park. With that, the mobile home park was, I'm probably gonna get this wrong, Steve, but I ascertained that it was put in the early 60s. I'm probably fairly close there, but the water system within the park that's private is starting to age. The owner has known that It has been leaking for a number of years and has taken steps to understand that by installing meters on every one of the units that's within the park. With that, they have come to the conclusion that from our master meter going in, the park is actually losing approximately 40 to 50% of the water that's going into the park, that's going into the, not making it to the units that he's metering. With that, in discussions with Mr. Hoffman, what he's requesting is he understands the water is a consumable item and he's willing to pay for the water coming into the park. If you look on the utility bill that's attached in the materials tonight, you'll see I highlighted sewer treatment and sewer transmission. And then I wrote on the utility bill that those charges come to $8,650.76. With that, he has ascertained that he thinks he's losing 47% of his water before it's going to his users. And thereby, they are not actually then using any sewer services for 47% of that water. So what he's requesting is a 47% reduction in sewer treatment and transmission, which would be $4,065.86. Variety of materials. Once again, he is looking at trying to do a 5-year plan at replacing his water system, but it is a large undertaking for that large of a facility. I guess with that, I'd open up if the chair would like to have Mr. Hoffman come up and add anything to my description.
Sure.
tonight.
Mr. Hoffman, please. Thank you.
Jared basically said everything that I was going to say. Maybe 3 years ago, we hired a company out of Madison to come in because we realized that our water bill was going up. So we hired a company that deals with a lot of manufactured housing communities through our association. And they came in and looked underneath everybody's mobile home and found numerous leaks, water lines, old valves, just everything was a mess. So at that point, we said, it's time to replace everybody's lined underneath the home, new valves, everything like that. Instead of just cutting in a meter, let's just replace the whole thing. So we did that. We still continued high usage. So they suggested hooking up a master meter that they would provide and we would buy to the city's master meter. So we coordinated that with the city. They came in and put a new meter in. We put that meter in, we hooked up. So at that point, we just wanted to see what the residents were using and what was not being used. And by those two comparisons, we came up with about a 30% loss 3 years ago. And then it went to 37, then it went to 40, then went to 43, then went to 47. So at that point, we thought we need to do something quick. We got together with Steiger Utilities and Buchner's. And in the meantime, every time I put a new home in, I put a new curb key in and a new water line that goes underneath everybody's home to just try to help the problem. And so they came in and they said, yeah, we can redo your park for you at a cost of $1.3 million. And we're a small community. I try to keep my rents down for people. We don't have that kind of money. I went to the bank to get a loan to get that. They said, no, you don't have that income. So we've tried to come up with other options, and we will pay for the water. I mean, and we pay for the sewer. We've been doing it for many years, and it's gotten to the point where this credit could actually help us maybe achieve a loan to do the park. We've had another option to replace the main. And now we're on our third option to do it in a 5-year plan starting next spring, which we would do a section at a time for 5 years, which would bring the cost down. But we realize it's something that has to be done. And I guess we're more than happy to pay for what we're using, but for what's going into the ground and not going through the city, through the sewer. That's all we're asking is maybe credit.
So I have a question, and it could be addressed to either one of you if you have the answer. So first off, I want to say it certainly helps inform us that you have your own metering going on, so you can have a accurate assessment of what it is you're losing. As far as those meters, it's my understanding that every state, has their own weights and measures, laws and policies. Do the meters you're using, do they meet state certification or credentialing requirements for metering? Am I clear on the question? Yeah.
I'm sure you can, they're the Metron meters out of ABT. I talked to Trent. He said he'd be more than willing to, I guess, get more specific with the meters with you. But as far as I know, I mean.
Okay. Jared, do you know?
I do not know that brand, but they're installed brand new, right, Mr. Hoffman?
Yes,
And they were installed about how many years ago?
2 years ago.
2 years ago. So I'm not sure with this brand, but the meters the city installs, the newest meters we have are actually good for 20 years before they have to be calibrated or taken out. The older style meters that we used to use were 10. So assuming they were a new meter, they should be good for a number of years yet before they would be out of calibration. But
Okay. Mayor.
Jared, do we monitor the flow in the sanitary sewer at that point where we could verify this volume?
we could, I don't know what size the sewer lateral is coming out there, if it's 6 or 8 inch. I'd have to do some research on that. We do have a flow meter for that we could possibly put in, depending on how it's set up, but I don't have an exact knowledge of what the park's sewer setup is.
But we do have a master meter for the city that's registering what water is going into the trailer park. And then Mr. Hoffman has his own meters of what it is that's actually being used. And therefore we have a fairly reasonable estimate of how much is being lost that's not going back into the sewage, I think, so long as those meters are meeting the weights and standards, or weights and measure standards.
I was trying to think if we had another way to verify.
Yeah, no, I understand.
I get a printout every day of everybody's mobile home, what they use and so anything that's not normal, high, extreme high, automatically shows up. If they use 700, 1,000 gallons a day, I'm automatically over to their house and, is there a toilet running or, faucet running? Is there something leaking? And usually the problem is fixed like that and the meter drops right back down to normal use. So that shows me, that these meters are pretty consistent.
These computer screen captures you have here with the usage, I'm assuming you have no control over those numbers that are popping up. That's from the metering company, correct?
Right. That's the feed I get every day on my home computer.
Okay, so it's call it a disinterested third party that's
Yeah.
providing that information. Okay.
Yes.
Mayor.
Jared, do we have precedence on this?
Well, we don't have anybody that has a secondary metering system that I know of. There's a few larger apartment buildings that, in the city, that not very many, but there are a couple that have 36 units or so that do meter individual units, but we have a master meter that we bill for the building. But the majority, this is an unusual circumstance where we have almost a system within a system.
Yeah, I think the precedence issue is always a concern. In this particular case, I think it would be confined to a very set of circumstances, a very narrow set of circumstances, because we do have a third-party monitoring system with meters that the owner has no control over how that third party is going to be assessing it. And it tells me it's probably fair. So we could be setting a precedent, but it would be for this very small set of circumstances of having this metering system that is attached to our lines. And you said that we haven't ever had that you're aware of in the past?
I've not seen one like this. It is unusual. I'd have to check and see about measuring their sanitary sewer coming out. I don't know if it comes out in one spot or more than one spot or what size it is. So I'd have to do some checking, but that would be a good calibration fail safe to verify.
The other example I was thinking of, I think that we did have someone, but they asked for, this was several years ago. We ended up reducing their water rate because they became more of a high volume user. And so there was something to do with that. Do you remember that one? They use more volume than.
On the water side, if our leak policy states that if you have a leak that we can confirm with a plumber or city staff, like let's say your toilet was running at your house for, a couple months between a quarter, we have a leak rate that we do use for the water side of it. The only thing I could think of that would be somewhat similar would be for instance, which is different, but the request we had a few months ago for the irrigation and not using the sewer, but that's under their control and we know it's going through the meter, so.
Okay. Yes, Mayor.
And I don't know if we have legal counsel, but Jared is here, or Jared and Eric. Is it within the realm of possibility to make like a contractual agreement that we would allow the reduction in the sanitary service fees contingent upon whatever the goal is, progress being made each year?
Yeah,
Review it annually, at least have staff review it annually.
I think if you're going to move forward with something, it would have to be based upon a percentage and it would reduce over time based upon giving the owner of the park a chance to get their water system replaced, but it would have to have a start and an end date in my mind.
Yeah, I was actually going to throw out for consideration and discussion here, not a motion, but I'm kind of thinking that this year we consider potentially a 100%, alleviation of the delta between what he's using and what is not going into our sewage based upon this metering. And that next year would be 80% of whatever that delta is, and then 60%, then 40%, then 20%. And that's 5 years, which would give an incentive to try to get this done. And then at that point, we're to zero and you're just paying it. I don't know how everyone else thinks about that. I guess I'd be interested in hearing from other board members as well as the city administrator on whether or not they think that that's workable or if that's problematic.
I would avoid 100% just because, as we pointed out earlier, we don't know or control his own meters. That's helping generates the difference between our pumpage and what's listed as the pumpage for him and what's being wasted. But I think that's doable, having a agreement in that aspect there. I do believe it's forward thinking because we have this quarter bill, there's going to be the next quarter bill, the next quarter bill, and so on. So instead of having a repeat of this conversation, we can at least have a plan to move forward.
Go ahead. Yes, Mayor.
I think I would be amenable to that. I just would like to see external verification for the reduction.
Jared.
Would it be good if we referred this for 30 days till the next meeting and we could look at what avenues we would have of metering their sewer discharge, possibly look into that and then come up with some sort of document that we could bring forward for possible review? If the board would, I think that would be a motion forward. We have told Mr. Hoffman that we are holding this portion of the bill and not charging late charges until a decision is made. with the understanding that if we would make a decision, whatever it is, that we would have to, go forward, but we have done that on this case. So I think that would probably be the best way to answer a couple questions and then have a document that we know has been reviewed and could be brought forward for possible action.
Right. So if we take no action tonight, we'll leave it on the agenda for next time.
But I'd like to, do we need to make a motion for this? I guess I'd like to make sure that we are withholding any further late fees because he's already beyond the penalty date. And I certainly wouldn't want him to pay additional penalties.
That doesn't go up again until the next billing.
We as staff and with the finance director's assistants, I did discuss it with her and we made a decision to hold off on the late fees for this because it was under advisement that we're making a decision on the bill. And this is the proper avenue. When we send the bills out, we tell people if there's something that we don't have a specific policy in regards, this is the board that would come to for review. And this was a instance where it was just a unique situation that we thought should come forward.
Okay.
Jared,
So, yes, Rena.
just curious, before the next meeting, is it possible to test one of their meters to make sure that it is up to the PSC standards? Is that something we could do?
Do you have one that you could,
Yeah, I should.
well, I mean, we could take one out of one of the, I assume you have one at your little office facility or something that we could take out and take down and test quick. You do that too?
I mean, I've got 5 of them in the shop. If you want to just take one.
Just since Jared doesn't know the brand and
Yep.
That would
Alderperson
be
Knott's
another
question.
fail safe.
They also give you the, because they have metered throughout the country. They're in Trempealeau and they're in Scott Ryan's parks. So they're everywhere. So,
Right.
but yeah, I mean, I can bring one up and we can definitely test it. And the owner of the company also said that he would give you the company that made the meters. You wanted to speak with them too.
Not necessarily need to speak to them, just for PSC standards, we do have to meet certain requirements. And if we test them and they also meet the PSC requirements, that makes us feel more confident.
I think that's probably wise. Mayor.
Yeah, and I would defer to Jared to determine if whatever the metering technique is
Yeah.
adequate.
Absolutely.
We don't need to rehash that.
So we're looking at deferring this until next month's meeting with the understanding that we're going to get a tighter grip on a check and balance on how much water is being lost and not going into the sewage, as well as verifying the meter and that it meets weights and measure standards. So,
We will also check on if we can measure the sewer coming out of the park and also work on a possible agreement
okay,
to bring forward.
all right.
Thank you.
Do we need to make a motion on that, or is that just an administrative call?
It'd
Not
be
sure.
good to
What's that?
have something to, be good to have a motion to.
Okay,
refer.
I'll make a motion that we defer a decision on item number 4 until next month's Board of Public Works meeting, with the understanding that during that time, we will have the city do a verification on the numbers of reference the 47% loss of water that is not going into the sewer, as well as confirming the accuracy of the meters being used by the property owner.
Second.
Motion by myself, second by Jim Olson. Any discussion? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye, opposed? Motion passes. I'd like to move, thank you very much. I appreciate it, Mr. Hoffman. I'd like to move item number 9 forward and as our new number 5, since we do have quite a few citizens here that are interested in that. And I think the rest of these are probably more administrative in function. Is anyone opposed to that? Okay, we will now move on to what is actually item number 9, the 2022 capital improvements budget. Projects to be included or deleted from the proposed 2022 capital improvement budget. And then at the end, we need to set in a date and time for public hearing. Before I guess, introduce this. I've been passing out to some of the senior staff. I ran out of time right before the meeting started. I'd like to give the remaining members of the board some, I guess it's a look into to my mind of where I think we should go, but these are just recommendations. But 1 second, I'll hand them out. Eric, did I get you a copy? I thought so. Okay. So as we move forward, I know Alder Stevens in the public comment section said he'd like to keep it down to 3 million. I know we had agreed last month as a board that we would try to stay between 3 and 3.5. So I think we have a reasonable target area that I would recommend that we continue to try to meet. This would be the 20-year bond money that we're looking at primarily. So I did spend a lot of time myself, and we can do this however we wish. I'm thinking what we want to do this month. Last month we went through what we want to cut. I'm thinking this month we might want to go through what we want to retain, adding up to that $3 to $3.5 million target. I also, like Alder Stevens in the public comment, would like to keep it lower rather than higher on that target range. If you take a look at what I've got here, I end up with using $813,819 of ARPA money, and using that specifically to avoid the state trust fund borrowing for this year, which with chart I have is 0. The 20-year bond, I'm actually at 3.134 million, so 3,134,000 and change. And then other source money, which is identified, that has not changed from last month. This is sources from previous year budgets that are already committed to donations, et cetera, things that are basically budget neutral for us. And that sum was 597,600. I'm open to ideas from fellow board members on how they think we should proceed. Should we go line by line?
Yeah, I think we should start at the beginning.
Okay.
Unless Jared has a better idea or someone.
No, we should probably make a decision if we're going deleting or if we're. Or,
He said he wants to keep it in.
Okay.
I was thinking like maybe if we do one pass of the things we all agree for sure, and then if we're not for sure, we leave it off.
Mhm.
If we don't all agree, we won't add it for now, and then we'll see where we're at. Does that make sense?
Sure.
You know what I mean? Like if you say you want it and I'm like, I'm not sure about that, then we just push it off until the end.
Sure.
Like, do one pass, a quick pass.
Sure. Yeah,
Because if we all agree on it, then that's easy, right?
I agree. Yeah.
I think we've just like you, we've all had time to know what our list is.
Sure. Jim, Sabrina, you good with that? Okay. So first one is line number 1, which is pavement maintenance to the sum of $300,000, which would come from a 20-year bond.
General fund.
General fund, roger that.
I think we all agree on that one,
Okay,
our biggest bang for the buck.
right?
all right. Next is line 2 alpha sidewalk replacement program, $75,000 general fund, 20-year bond. Anyone not agree with that?
That's a liability program that we replace the sidewalks 1/7 of the city each year.
Roger that.
Okay. I would like to include A through D, but I see Stephen left D off, so I don't know what other people think. Jared thinks all A through D? Or could reductions be made?
I would say that definitely A and B for sure must stay in. C and D we did have the sidewalk connection in East Avenue in last year's capital improvements budget, and we did take it out.
So the reason I didn't include D is because I don't see us incurring any liability from connecting the sidewalks since they don't currently exist. I do, however, see liability with sidewalk replacement, sidewalk repairs, and Americans with Disability Access. That is where I do see the liability. That's why I was recommending using the 121,000 from item 2D as a cost savings measure and moving that forward to next year. And of course, that would become even a higher priority, I would assume, next year based on this.
So how about we'll put A and B in, and then we'll come back to it for the D and the C, or the,
Are we
How about-
saying C as well?
that's,
C, is C okay? Or, I mean, does somebody not want C?
I'm fine with it being in.
Okay, so two A,
would
B, and
just
C, and we're gonna come back to 2D. I'll highlight that. Okay, that brings us to, well, item number 3, we eliminated last month unless somebody wants to revisit that. Okay, item number 4 is the 4A anyway, I have as the design for intersection improvements. We're not ready for construction yet anyway, correct?
I actually, when I was discussing these with you, we are actually starting, it's actually on the agenda night for the right-of-way process. This is the safety funding we received, so 90% of the construction will be paid for with a grant. But we do need to have the funding for the right-of-way. So the 20,000 for the right-of-way work needs to stay in to keep that project moving ahead in 2022.
So design and right of way are necessary this year if we're going to take be able to use that grant for the following year.
Correct.
Okay. I have no problem with adding in B, it's 20,000. Does anyone else have an issue with that? Or do you have an issue with A for that matter?
We have to do it.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah. So the right of way then, that's for B. It's another 20K. And that, so 4A was actually out of other sources, but 4B, the right of way will be general fund 20-year bond, correct?
Correct.
All right, so that increases that by 20K.
Alternate,
Yes, Eric.
I guess my question would be, that 20,000 then, is that long-term debt, or would that be ARPA qualified?
That should
be
be ARPA
bonded.
qualified.
Oh, well then,
Or, I mean, that should be long-term
Yeah.
bonded. That
can
should be
bond for
bonded.
that,
That
yeah.
can be bonded.
More than
Okay.
20.
We can bond for it then.
so it's 20-year, okay, yeah, all right. So plus 20 over here, okay. And then C, you're saying we won't be able to start that until 2023 anyway.
Correct.
Okay. So number 5, off-street trail paving and maintenance. I'm recommending we do the maintenance of what we currently have again and defer the paving portion of that until next year's consideration. And I took a guess, I have no idea, I'm gonna have to defer, ultimately to Jared on this, that's gonna be about $50,000 for maintenance, assuming that paving is more expensive than maintenance, but that all comes down to how much paving, how much maintenance, we don't know. So is 50K enough to do the maintenance?
It would be enough to do the maintenance. We would actually, whatever we were budgeted, we would get as much done as we could, would be what we do when we start with the maintenance portion of that project. So obviously the off-trail maintenance kind of gets into a sidewalk liability thing too. If it gets too bad, then we eventually have to do something because it's
Sure.
considered almost like a sidewalk, but it's not part of the sidewalk program. It's not concrete sidewalk. It's more of it's the off-street trail system. So this would be for things like the trail behind Crossing Meadows, behind Sam's Club, trail along Greens Coulee, the trail along Sand Lake Road, all those different trails that you see, and they do get heavy use. I mean, they get used. You see people on those trails constantly, so.
Okay. Any concerns from not funding fully that line and only partially funding it?
Let's come back to it.
We'll come back to it. Okay, so
Well, they're not,
yes.
when we're looking at especially liability
Mhm.
on this, I would say the liability aspect of the trail might be even more important of the sidewalk program because these trails are totally owned and maintained. The liability is against the city. If I'm correct, Jared, versus when we do sidewalk replacement, which is good, the ultimate liability if somebody trips and falls on a city sidewalk is the abutting property owner. So just something to consider when
Well,
we look at item 5.
yeah, well, and again, that is why I think we need to have enough money to maintain what we have. It's the paving that I'm thinking we might be able to defer because that would be new unless I'm missing something.
It's actually repaving of existing
It's
trails.
repaving.
Yes, it's not a new trail, it'd be repaving of existing trails.
That's why I think we should just come back.
We'll
to
come
it,
back
and-
to
'cause
that.
It can be a flexible, I feel like I'm hearing that's a flexible number.
Okay, got it. All right, number 6A is design of street paving. Construction not until 2025. Is the design something that everyone else would like to have? Why do I not have that in my numbers? All right, I messed that up.
I have a blank on your
Yeah,
It
spreadsheet.
should not be.
I can.
Go ahead.
So this, we are applying for an STP urban grant. If we receive that, we would get 80% of the construction cost for this project paid for. We'll know more after Wednesday's meeting on whether we will get the grant for the project, but we applied for this same project 2 years ago. And our scoring was very close and this is the new cycle. So I am fairly confident that we will receive the construction funding. So if we receive that construction funding, we will pay for the design in-house, but we'll need to get it started because it's through the state process. It's not through the city process. So it takes longer to get it done.
So how much money would you then need?
For the design, 70,000 for the
That's just
design.
design.
That's
That
just
doesn't
the
include
design.
grant money.
That the grant money for the project we applied for, it was about an $800,000 project. We
Ah,
would receive
okay,
80% of that through grant funding.
okay. That's something we want to come back to, or is that something we think we need to fund?
I think it
has
needs to be in.
there.
I think so too, but I mean,
Especially if we're gonna get grant funding.
yeah, I mean, it's a substantial amount of money for a future project that needs to be done. But we have to start with the design. Does anyone have concerns with that? Okay. Next is 7, street paving for Brown Street, Lester Avenue, Rudy Street. The pays a rating of 2.3, sum of $435,000. Anyone think that we can defer that? Or recommend that we defer that?
In my opinion, this is the worst street of the bunch in the list.
Okay. I've got that on my list, so yes, so. Number 8 is street paving Ironwood Place and Cooley Court for $102,000. Pays a rating of 2.5. And again, go ahead.
Under discussion, I'm gonna we got another item later in the agenda tonight going over street ratings that were just compiled. And with that, you're gonna notice in those street ratings that the graph that's in that material can show that we've been making consistent gains on our 8s and 9s, which are good. It's a 0 to 10 scale. So 10 is brand new and 1 is very poor. We've been making gains on more and more mileage or percentage of streets that are 8, 9s and 10s and less 3 and 4s. You can see it. It's very easy to see in the graph. So we've made great progress. So it's hard to say that we are behind on street paving, but we want to make sure that we keep up on street paving too. In round numbers, we get 40 to 45 years out of a street. We got streets that have been paved in the 70s in the city right now. We get exceptional length of service out of a street due to the street maintenance we do in the city, chip sealing, crack filling, things like that. But if you just look at round numbers, if we've got 90 miles of streets in the city and you got 45 years out of a street, you should be doing 2 miles a year. Last year's budget, we didn't do a paving project this year in 2021 because we made a priority to get the Green Coulee roundabout installed, and that's where our paving money went. So last year, just on the utility side of things, we paved just under a half a mile of street. This year, if we pave number 7, number 8, and we do a utility project, we'll be at 1.2 miles. So we'll still be under 2 miles again. So even with what we've got in the budget currently, with what cuts were made last month, we'll still be under 2 miles. Am I confident in our crack filling and chip sealing and our street rating currently? I am, but it can't be a trend. Eventually, we're going to need a large paving project where we're going to get 3 miles done in a year, and it's going to be one of them years where we're going to have to do a lot of paving. So are we in a good spot? I think we are, but I just want to make sure everyone understands the trend that I'm seeing in where we're going and make sure it's not a long-term trend.
Do we want to revisit that, or what do we think?
I think we should put in number 7 and we should leave number 8 out for now.
Okay, so we'll revisit 8. I think we'd already agreed on 7, so, yeah. All right, number 9 and 10 were eliminated last month. Does anyone want to revisit those? All right, and number 11,
It's already funded.
that is correct. It's under other sources for both A and B. And we had eliminated C last time. So then we're up to number 12, South Kinney Cooley lighting upgrades. Do not currently have that on my list. Is that something that folks think we need to reconsider?
We can look at trying to find another source of funding to look at the lighting cabinet upgrade.
Okay. So
So we should remove it or we should hold off on it?
I'm fine removing it.
Remove.
so it's removed.
Number 12 is removed.
Then 13A is, again, other sources. Basically, it's 2021 money. That's for the design of the South 16th off-street path to South Kinney. And that's funded through other sources unless somebody thinks we need to remove that. Okay. Number 14 was removed last month. Does anyone want to revisit that? Okay, number 15 is street reconstruction, 11th Avenue North, Force Main replacement, and then Main Street to Well Street and Monroe Street, and then 11th to East and Pierce, 11th to Sand Lake. It's a higher Paiser rating than some of them that we've disapproved. But this is not just a street paving. This involves sanitary sewer, water, storm sewer, et cetera, et cetera. And the whole idea is to get this done all at once so we don't have to keep tearing up the same road year after year after year to put this in incrementally and then have to repave it. Jared.
And I would agree that the street rating, I mean, once you get down below 4, the street rating is, you're starting to get down to the point where the street's starting to get, it needs to be replaced. But this project also includes a new force main. The force main that is from the 11th and Well lift station, the sanitary sewer lift station for that multi-block area. Force main's original from the 1960s. So as part of this project, that would also replace the force main that pumps the sewer up to Main Street. It would replace the water main, replace the storm sewer in this area. We'd make some storm sewer upgrades to hopefully even make this area better due to the recent rain events we've been witnessing in this area. So if I had to choose a utility portion, a utility project, it would be this one was the one that I think is the priority. If you look in the 5-year capital improvement budget, once again, I understand we're going to have choices to make and like that. And we've been very fortunate in there. A lot of our facilities have been upgraded through the mortgage revenue bonding through the utilities. So we've gotten a lot of projects done, like the Troy Street Deep Storm Sewer. We've gotten the Green Coulee Reservoir, Crestwood Booster Station, the Sixth and Quincy Sanitary Sewer Lift Station have all been funded and replaced, which have been very good for our system. But I'd also, it's almost back to the street paving again. And when I was started over 25 years ago at the city, I started in the 8th Avenue South, 9th Avenue South, Green, Hickory. Those streets down there all were in that 80-year-old range where the utilities need to be replaced. So it's just like street paving. We want to keep up. If you look at the 5-year capital improvement program, there's not only the 2 projects that we're going to still defer from this year, there's other projects in future years that the infrastructure, as far as the sewer and water is concerned, is still ready to be replaced. So once again, would I put our infrastructure, due to our investment by over these decades, I'd put our infrastructure against anyone. But I think we should still be replacing the infrastructure that is aging, and this area could use it's on the cycle.
I would also submit to one of the reasons why I have this on my recommended approval list is because of the size of the project. Conservatively, we're looking at 5.5% inflation this year. That's on the lower end of the estimates I've seen. And taking that into account, a project this size at 1.29 million, you're talking next year, if we wait, we just added 71,000 more dollars on the cost. So that's kind of where I'm thinking this one, we really need to get out of the way. It's just going to get bigger over time. That's my 2 cents. Sabrina.
Items 14 and 17, will those have to be replaced next year, Jared? Will those projects have to be done?
They are the next ones in the priority list, but we did already take number 14 and referred it in a couple previous years. The water main over there is from the 50s. I mean, it's and the street isn't that good, but it's all of these are there. You know, you're getting down to the nitty gritty where it's easy to make as far as utility replacements go, it's easy to make a case for any one of them.
I'm just looking at that total and we're pushing 1.2 million off to next year. If you add those 2 together, items 14 and 17, just.
Well, if we were to do 1.2 plus 1.3, we've
Yeah.
got no wiggle room left for anything.
Yes, I
Can't do
understand.
We're not doing them all.
And I understand that. I mean, we bring forward projects just like every department does. It's like I stated when we first brought this out in September. We have $10 million of the projects, and there's a reason for every project on the list.
Of course.
You know, there's I think every project here has merit, and you know, you can drill down into certain projects and get into them, but they really do have merit.
But certainly we have to have our eyes open that those are coming up again next year, and that we'll have the same challenge, you know, big high ticket item that is probably going to have to be considered very strongly. So what's the rest of the board think on number 15? Is this something that you want to support for this coming year or not?
I'd like to see it in.
I'm sorry?
I'd like to see it in.
You'd like to come back to it again, you said?
I would like to see it in the budget for this year.
Okay.
Keep it in. That's
it
my
in,
position,
yeah.
But whatever, Jim and Sabrina.
Anyone disagree? Okay. So that's 15. Number 16 is 12th Avenue South Stormwater Outfall Repair, sum of $30,000. I do have that on my recommended. Again, that would be general fund 20, that would be a 20-year bond for $30,000.
It is a new project, but it is if you drive down Double S, there's about a 20-foot deep hole progressing closer to the street all the time. It really could it make it another year? It might be able to, but we'd probably have to start doing Band-Aid fixes to it.
So I guess what I'd ask a question on is because I had made an error on my own chart here with 6A being $70,000 for the design of the street paving for Midwest Drive East Main. I added this one on later, I think actually as recently today, thinking we could afford it. Is that something that we could use to offset the 70K on 6A? When totally, I mean, it would only cover like 40% of it. But we can defer
Okay,
that.
so let's just put it,
mean,
let's just
Let's
say.
revisit it. Okay. Yeah.
That's all.
Because it's going into the stormwater, actually, so it kind of comes in differently, but that's okay. We can come back to it.
Come back.
Come back to it.
All right. Number 17 was removed from last month. Does anyone want to reconsider that? Number 18, auto water flush station at Crestwood is that is through other sources. Is there any reason we should remove that?
So Jared, can you refresh my memory? Because I thought we removed that and then it was in this year's budget, but it got removed.
Yeah.
But you're using some money that we didn't use from a previous year now to fund it?
It was removed in 21, but it's shown the other sources since September. What we're using is we're using the rest of the water funds from the mortgage revenue bond to pay for the rest of these projects that you see for 18, 20, 21, and 22 is the proceeds from project savings on the mortgage revenue projects, which would include the Crestwood Booster Station and the reservoir project in Green Coulee.
Okay, so those, I'm fine with all those that he listed, 18, 20, 21, and 22 being funded with money already bonded.
Anyone else have issues with that? Yes, city manager, Eric.
No issue per se, but just sort of additional clarification. Because it's a mortgage revenue bond based on the revenues from the utility, the funds must be spent for utility purposes. It could not be spent for any other purposes like streets or other.
So this is a good purpose for it then.
Yes.
Okay. All right, so that covers 18, 20, 21, and 22. Number 19, which we just skipped, is also other sources to pay for the traffic study on Sand Lake Road and 12th Avenue South, including intersection analysis. Anyone have issues with that?
If we would not receive the local La Crosse Area Plan Committee Local Studies Program funding, we would just delay the project.
Okay. All right, so that brings us down to 23, sanitary sewer camera.
With this one, Jared, you do have I mean, we are currently now contracting for service and we do have the option to continue doing that.
We do. We've had a camera that has had over 10 years now. That was a lesser quality camera than what this unit would be. It is basically to the point where it's not functional anymore. We can't get any parts for it. So the only thing would be is that, you know, if we needed something for an emergency, it would be difficult. We are fortunate that our contractor is in Trempealeau County. So they're a local contractor that does our televising, which does help us. But at some point, the sanitary sewer camera would be a good purchase for the sanitary sewer utility.
Yeah, and I think I've mentioned actually in public record before, I support doing this. I just don't know if we can do it this year. In the end, it's a cost savings to the city on the long term. On the short term, I just don't know that if we can include it. Certainly willing to come back to it if people want me to highlight that to return.
Do you want to come back to it or do you want to just remove it?
I would say with what we have in here, I'd say we would remove it,
Okay.
knowing that it's coming.
Yep, absolutely.
Yeah, and but then next time you'll have listed it 2 times that you've asked for it.
Yeah, I will. I mean, you never know until you see the whole picture next year, but I suspect I would be a strong advocate for that next year. So. Right, 24 and 25 were removed last month. Anyone want to revisit them? Right, and then 26 is the Franklin Street Lift Station upgrade for 50,000. That's new. That's for the design with construction in 2024. What's the risk if we hold off the design until next year, 2022?
We are, with the growth in that area, we're starting to experience more and more use of the Franklin Street Lift Station. So we are anticipating, we've got it shown for construction 24. But at some point, we're going to have to do some upgrades to that lift station. We'd like to put standby power on site. Right now, we take a trailer out there but we don't have the time between the time the power goes off and getting the trailer out there. It gets less and less with more and more flow coming. So we're just trying to be proactive here. Is it something that we need done? It's operational, it's functional, but we're trying to be proactive on getting ready for a project in the future.
But if you were to delay your design until 2023, i.e. next year's budget cycle, would you still be able to do construction in 2024?
We could.
You have an issue with removing that?
No, that's fine.
Anyone else have an issue with removing that? Okay, number 27, replace air handler and VFDs at Public Works.
I see Brian Babish is here. If he wants to speak on 27 and 30 or give us the merits, you may know a little more up to the Public Works facility.
Sorry?
I'm
Yeah, Brian?
wondering,
Yeah, please.
sorry to put you on the spot, Brian.
This is one of those projects that just trying to bring our units in one of the other buildings back up to standard of, we're still using R22 refrigerant in that facility. Those units aren't as old as some of the other ones in the city, but it's definitely one that we're looking at. We've done some work up there in the last couple of years and would be a way to upgrade that system.
Don't have that on my current recommendations, either one of them, but I think I'm reconsidering myself that maybe what we do is we do consider the $10,000 for number 27 and defer the new project 30 till next year. So we at least move forward on those. What do you think about that?
And that can help us, the normal life expectancy, they tell me putting on a variable speed drive on our units, they say is going to be 7 to 8 years, and then expect that you're going to start having issues. And we've been pretty lucky at this point, but the more usage we get in that building, the more that likelihood that we're going to start having issues now that, we're definitely expanded that age group on those units.
Well, number 27, the $10,000 project was on last year. So this is the second year asking. 30's a new request. What do you think? If we got the older one done, would that at least buy some time and so reconsider next year?
Yes.
Anyone else have concerns with that?
I would agree with that if we could do one, but then not the other.
Okay, so eliminate 30. And I need to add 10K on here with 27 on my list. So, decent.
And Sabrina, I assume you're typing away.
I was counting on her to do the total. I wasn't even trying.
I'm keeping track too, so
Well, because we've got so many variables. We've
Yeah.
got the 20-year bond, we've got the ARPA funds, and then we also can consider whether it's a utility project, I think, to a certain degree.
So, so that leaves 28, 29, 31, and 32, and 33 and 34, which were all eliminated last month. Does anyone want to revisit them? Okay, we are on Planning Department. We're almost to Parks and Recs, folks. So for the ones that are hanging here. So Planning Department number 35. I got a call from Katie and Jared, I believe it was just yesterday, actually, saying that that was something that Katie, you were willing to defer for a year. Is that correct? Does anyone here have an issue with that? Okay.
Just In my discussion, though, we would have to do it next year,
It's not optional.
not optional next year. It would be
Okay,
required for next year.
all right, yeah. So but for this year, that is eliminated. Number 36, I have it as listed 35 on my, that's a mistake. That should be 36, project number at the bottom of page 1 of my worksheet. And that's the urban forestry general, $25,000. Again, that would be general fund 20-year bond. We haven't done trees in a while. I'm just recommending that we move at least on one of those urban forestry projects, and this is their higher priority one. Anyone take issue with that?
I think if we're not going to include 37 right now, we should at least keep it on the maybe list.
On the, oh, so come back to it,
Maybe.
come back to it at the end?
Yes.
Okay, I'll highlight that. And then 38 and 39, we had eliminated last month. Anyone want to revisit those? Okay, that brings us to item number 40, which is portable radios, and that's being done by other sources through sales of equipment. Anyone want to consider not doing that? Okay. And then item number 41, land purchase for proposed second fire station. Do not have that on my list. Does anyone want to add it on? $500,000.
We should just wait and come back to it. And then we
Okay.
can have those bigger discussions at the end
Okay.
when we know how much money we have.
Okay. Parks and Rec. Number 42, which is the outdoor rec comprehensive plan rewrite. And that is something that could be paid through ARPA funding. I have it on my recommend approval list. Anyone think we should not do that?
I think we should do it.
Yeah, planning is something the city does that's really well, and that's no doubt in my mind on the long term saves us a lot of money. So I agree. Next is the Oak Park Pickleball Court Resurface and Court Edition for $55,000. I had that on my recommend approval, but that would be general fund 20-year bond. Anyone have concerns with that? I do know that the Parks and Rec, when they send forward their recommendations, they are in priority of what they think needs to be done, and this is very high on theirs.
I drove by there on Saturday and there was a lot of people out there playing.
Well, hearing nothing, we'll leave that on then. Next is number 44, Van Riper Park, Jimmy Olson Field renovation. That also would be general fund 20-year bond. Again, I have that on my approval for now. My recommendation, does anyone want to argue otherwise? Okay, we'll leave that on for now then too. Number 45 is Rowe Park, Gluckson Tennis Court resurface for $60,000. And again, that would be general fund 20-year bond. I'm recommending that we strongly consider that. Anyone want to argue otherwise? Yes, Mayor.
Jared, does that include the school district's portion?
Dan,
Oh, sorry, Dan.
Dan's gonna come up, but
You need to stretch your legs anyway. If you want some candy, there's some over there.
I need candy. No, it does not include the funding from the school district. We want to get the funding, and then the school district asked us if it is approved, then we can go back to them. So these projects have been a 50-50 share. So that number could be reduced by 30, but I don't want to go into it if the school district doesn't, have the funding or when we can get the project done.
Got it.
So I support leaving this one in.
Okay. Anyone else? Right, let's leave that one on. And that brings us to number 46, Glen Fox Park Basketball Court Improvement for $50,000. I do not have that on my recommendation. I have that as a reduction. Anyone want to argue otherwise?
I think we should put 46, 47, and 48 on the holding off until later or removing?
Yeah, I actually argue 48 should be funded. We've deferred ADA improvements there once before. I'd like to see that done. Just,
So we'll remove 46 and 47 and we'll revisit 48? Is that what you're saying?
I mean, yeah, we can revisit 48, or if you'd like, we can consider just leaving it on for now. I just personally, I think that needs to stay. We're incurring risk on that as far as liability every year that we delay those, and we have delayed that already. If even one of you thinks we want to revisit it, we'll revisit it. That's fine. You want to revisit that along with 46 and 47?
I think we take off 46 and 47.
Agree.
Take 46, 47 off. You want to
We'll revisit 48.
revisit 48. Got it. Okay. All right. Number 49 was removed last month. Anyone want to revisit that? And then number 50 is Sunfish Wayside Improvements, and that's funded other sources through a donation. Is there anyone who does not want to take that project? I didn't think so. All right, next is 51 Sandalwood Wood Park Improvement. That one was removed last month. Anyone want to revisit that? We're on to the police department. Number 52, marked police vehicles, 2 new ones. That's based on a rotation that they have scheduled. Anyone, and again, that would be through ARPA money, by the way. Anyone not want to replace those marked vehicles?
I think 52 needs to stay in.
I would agree.
All right, hearing no opposition. Next, we move on to 53 and 54 were removed last month. Anyone want to revisit? So number 55 is the unmarked police vehicle, and this would be something new. And again, I know that having talked to the chief, this is a big priority for him as well. It increases his capability. Is there anyone, and that's also through ARPA money, anyone who does not want to spend ARPA money on an unmarked vehicle?
I think this needs to stay in.
I agree. Next, and I'm not hearing, again, it's not just, the mayor and Steve show. So if anyone else wants to chime in, please
I'm
do.
trying to speak up so we can keep moving. I don't want to.
I'm making eye contact with everybody, but yeah. All right. So next is the number 56, the utility vehicle. I initially had this as being removed, but I was not understanding that this was ARPA money. And since it is, I'm recommending that we keep it.
Can we come back to it?
Want to come back to it? Sure. Yeah, if even one person says come back, I'm going to do that. We'll discuss that later. Let's just get everything we 100% agree on. Okay, number 57, the Axon interview room systems. And again, I initially was only going to recommend we do 3 of 5, but this is ARPA money. I think we can afford it. I'm recommending we get all 5 done this year using ARPA funds. Is there anyone who has a differing opinion?
I'd like to come back to this one.
Come back to that as well. Okay. And then number 58 is the Central Square license. That's also going to be done through ARPA money.
I think that one has to stay, right?
That needs to stay.
Committed to that, aren't we?
Yeah.
58 states.
Okay. So next is the Omni Center. Number 59, Arena number 2 roof, which was also brought forward last year and deferred to sum of 75,000. This year we can use ARPA funds on that. I personally believe that needs to stay. That's his highest priority under the Omni Center.
Would like to have that stay.
I would as well.
Okay, no disagreement. All right. Next is 60. Again, another roof. So when I go through on how I prioritize things, I think I mentioned before. Number 1 is always public safety. That's going to be police, fire, streets, things of that nature. Number 2 is cost mitigation, if you will. There are certain projects that if we don't do, roofs being a big one, and if they fail, it's going to cost us much more money than what it would have if we just replaced it in the first place. So that's why on both of those, I feel very strongly we really should keep those. Is there anyone who disagrees? Okay. All right, number 61, rink chiller we removed last month. Anyone want to revisit that?
But I will say we'll probably have to do it next year.
Agree. Yeah, and we'll have to strongly consider it. It's a big dollar item again. But yeah, that's, next year will be the third year it's been brought forward, so. Number 62, parking lot for 27.5. I do not have that on my list. Anyone want to keep it on? Can we eliminate that?
I think we'll have to.
Yeah, okay.
Sorry.
All right, so that's eliminated. Number 63, replace air handler VFDs 2 each. That was also here last year and was deferred. That's $27,000. We can use ARPA funds for that. I recommend we do that. Does anyone have a differing opinion?
Is Brian still here?
Yeah.
Brian, I feel like this is something that these VFDs that are always coming up. Is this, how many will get replaced for this? And is there like you're going through a cycle of replacing them? Can you explain it?
And I don't know what the response was before I came on, but I've been trying to keep up with those things on a kind of a life cycle.
Right.
The two that we're looking for at the Omni Center right now are kind of band-aided together. They work well enough that we can continue to use them, but are they optimal? Far from it. We've kind of robbed Peter to pay Paul to put two of them back together to be able to use them. So that's kind of what this is being used for right now.
But for an example, how many of these units are there like at the Omni Center?
8.
Like a lot, yeah. So we really need to be replacing quite a few every year if we're
Right.
ever going to keep.
And there's more in this building than there is at the Omni Center.
Okay, thank you. Okay, so that being said, I think 63 should stay in.
Anyone differ? Okay. 64, right on floor machine for 17,000. Again, that's ARPA fund eligible. Is that something we want to keep? I have it on my list, but I don't have real strong views either way.
Ryan, how old is the machine that you have now? I think it's pretty old, if I remember right.
And how many square feet of floor are you cleaning with? Because the
More than
more
you can in a day.
I was gonna say it'd be hard to imagine what we are looking at square foot wise. And just for an example, with the rubber flooring is on the unit that we use now wasn't specifically built for rubber flooring. We had hard matted flooring and the one we had was perfect for that. But when we've redone the flooring over the last few years, it is just destroying the drive chain. What would end up happening is if this would get approved, the one that's there now would end up coming down here and be able to use, we have an old one here, but it's really antiquated and doesn't work well at all. We would bring what we currently have at the Omni Center, which as far as drivability works, it just is not very usable in our application right now. And we bring that here to be able to use in the police and the fire department bays. And they could use it daily there because it's on hard floors.
Right, okay.
And then we have a different style, something more almost in line that they have at Public Works.
Okay, sounds good. Thank you for that.
So what do the board members think? Keep it?
I think
Okay.
Say so.
All right. Omni Center rebranding. Again, that's ARPA eligible, and I know that,
ARPA, it's not ARPA, it's funding from the,
oh, I'm sorry, yeah, I've got that wrong. I got it right on my list.
And I mean, and you
Potential,
can say
sorry.
that's contingent upon funding from all other sources,
Contingent
just
on
as we
funding from
did
the
the other
county.
study earlier.
Roger that. So assuming that we get the funding from the county, is that something we want to keep? I thought so. Okay, next. Yeah. 66, paint north and south ends of building of the library for 20,000.
I would
That
like-
is ARPA, so. I've got it on my list for recommending approval. Does anyone have a countervailing view?
I think we need to do something at the library, so if that's what we're gonna do this year.
Okay. And then next is City Hall, brick repairs. Again, this is a mitigation. We're getting water leakage through the bricks. Water can do immense damage to a structure. I highly recommend for a small price of $10,000 that we get that project done.
Now, that's just a design. That's to figure out what the problems are.
Yeah, it does say design.
could
Roger
turn
that.
Into a large project depending on what we.
Yeah, it probably will be next year.
So we
Absolutely.
need to do that design to figure out what
What the
are.
heck it is. Yeah. All right. And again, that is ARPA as well. Next, emergency management generator upgrade. This is our third year brought forward. Initially, I was thinking there's no way we were going to be able to afford that. But when I reworked everything on my own chart, looking at, that's why I just get it to how I think with the ARPA versus other sources and everything, it became clear to me that I was well under the 3 million minimum mark. And by adding that project back in, it still only put us up to that 3.1
On your list.
on my list. Yes, on my list. This is just my recommendations. I mentioned that's all it is. So I'm thinking that we can probably manage to do this. Is this something we want to come back and look at again when we're looking at everything else?
I have a question about that. I wouldn't think a generator would anticipate a 20-year lifetime, but I could be wrong. Is that, why is that not ARPA eligible?
It is more so bond eligible than being ARPA eligible. I think it could be ARPA eligible, but we can bond for it. It does have a 20-year life to the
Okay.
generator. If it's properly maintained, it should last 20 years. For the generator we're going to buy, we're buying a professional grade commercial generators this is for a generator like we would use at our utilities.
And I'm wondering, since this keeps getting put off, if there is a possibility, because my understanding is that this generator would power the entire building. Is there, talk
So,
about like if we'd made
If we want power, not when we had engineering consultant Strand Associates actually look at this for us and paid them to do a preliminary audit and design. If we wanted to do all city hall and not include the administrative side, so we'd include everything from council chambers going that way, the generator would be $75,000 less. So for the investment and doing it at the time and doing it right for 75,000, which is 20% more cost, we can add the whole administrative side of the building. And I think if we did actually have an emergency where you're going to need the whole building, it'd be, finance, administration, HR, all those functions are in that side. So their offices would all work.
And how is it powered?
Currently,
No, how would if we purchase this?
yeah, it'd be natural gas.
Natural
gas,
gas, okay.
I would also, I understand these things are assessed for bonding purposes differently, but I would also argue, this is not something we would find a lot of usage, knock on wood. This is for emergency use. So if it's well maintained, I would expect it would probably last much longer than 20 years because we're not going to be running it constantly.
I would ask that we come back to this.
Come back to it. Number 69, replace 4 overhead doors. This is its second year on a request and it's $20,000 and it would be ARPA funding. I'm recommending that we retain this.
I agree.
Agree? Everyone agrees? Okay. Likewise, number 70, $10,000 fire department floor repair. And this is the third year it's been brought forward. I recommend we retain this. It's ARPA money.
Agree.
Right? Okay. Next is 71, replace the 40-ton AC condensing unit. This is the second year brought forward. Let's see, 71. I recommend that we do this. I've gone back and forth on this one myself. I've said yes, I've said no on my own chart so many darn times. This is the number one conflicting line item I've had personally. Because it's a high dollar item and we could, if we defer this, it could be used for other projects for sure. The challenge is if we take risk on that and we roll the dice and they come up craps in the middle of the summer next year, we're in big trouble. So I just don't know if we, I highly suspect we will not have a problem with that AC unit next summer. But if we do, we got a problem. So I don't know what other board members think. Yeah, Jared.
That's one of them things that even if we decide to use emergency funds and do a budget amendment or something, that unit would probably have a 3 to 6 month lead time at least. Even it's not probably going to be something that they're going to have. Yeah, it's yeah. So
You're reinforcing what I'm saying. Low probability.
This building
high
has
risk.
no windows in it, but I guess the other thing I would refer to Brian and just say, you know, the AC unit out here, I know it's been worked on many times and there's a lot of repairs done to it. Can you just elaborate on, I think it's even getting to the point you can't weld it anymore. It's
The unit that we're looking at, it's the one when there's 2 units back to back. There's a 50-ton unit and a 40-ton unit is the one closest to the gate. The year I started, we welded new condensing fans inside of the unit. And that's like we can give this a one-time shot thing. We've been able to baby it through till now. But if we would end up getting one of those things would spring a leak again, that unit would not be able to be repaired for the fact that it's R22. They couldn't do what they did 8 years ago. for that unit.
How old is the unit?
Was original to the building when they rebuilt, so now it's 22 years old.
Okay. Everyone wants it in?
So I'm recommending to stay on. Again, low probability of failure, but high risk if it fails.
The area of that building that unit takes care of is the PD, the fire department administration, the downstairs locker rooms, and the EOC.
And I would also say that our IT room is downstairs in
Yes.
that area, and that has to be, that gets hot, we're gonna lose our computer system.
IT.
But this way, if that goes out and we don't have an AC unit, we'll be buying whatever it costs to get a portable one to plug in down there. Or we'll shut the computers down.
So what's the rest of the,
I think
Board.
everyone wants to leave it in.
we'll leave it in. Okay.
That's fine.
All right. So I move on. Number 2, air handler VFD. This is a $15,000 new request for City Hall. I'm recommending that we leave that in. It is ARPA money.
I agree.
Anyone disagree? Okay. Then we get to 73 miscellaneous concrete projects. This is a new request, all of them concrete west side of the fire department, concrete exterior sidewalk. I'm recommending it would be a total of 15,700. I'm recommending that we defer them a year. Jared, do you have concerns with that?
Yeah, I don't think if there's any trip hazards, we can take care of that under just a stone here or something. So I think that can be removed.
Anyone else have other concerns? All right, let's remove that.
73 is removed.
73 A and B, yeah. Number 74, resurface City Hall parking lot, 15,000. Again, that's a first time request. And, can it be better? Yeah, but I mean, I'm out there parking and I don't see any real serious hazards on it so far this year. Do you see any issues deferring it?
We can also probably come through and we're crack filling city streets and do some maintenance to it as part of that also.
Okay,
So should we leave it in for a lower amount or?
No, I can do it under what crack filling needs to be done there. It'll be relatively small compared to the large amount we do in the city streets. So we'll do it under that.
We'll take that one out then.
And then 75, 76, and 77 were eliminated last month. Anyone want to revisit any of those? Okay, 78 is enterprise resource planning accounting software.
I'd like to come back to that one.
Actually, we're going to have a little presentation quick on it,
Oh, we
if that's okay with the committee. I have Caitlin here, our
Oh,
information.
Caitlin, you
system.
waited all this time to do the.
She's,
Well, there's several reasons why I want to move that up before this other garbage, but yeah.
Other garbage?
so
Poor word choice.
you brought her along because she's going to give you a much better presentation than I could ever do. So.
Okay.
Can you move this or you want me to?
Oh, yeah, could you?
Yeah, or whatever. You can just.
Okay, so Sabrina has already done a lot of legwork and convincing everybody what an ERP is and why we need one, but do you want to go to the next slide? So Government Technology is a magazine that defined it as an architecture that supports the distribution of an enterprise-wide information system. And what that means is it kind of consolidates a whole bunch of disparate and ad hoc programs, a la carte programs, I guess I should say. So it includes modules for the whole city, right? It has inventory, finance and accounting, project management, purchasing, human resources, data services, and access security. So I wanted to just highlight one of the horrible processes that we have right now is building permits, and it touches 3 different programs. And that means it goes to Encode 9, Encode 10, and then iWork. And that means that somebody has to put that data in 3 times and has to touch multiple systems and multiple people. And meanwhile, our customer is sitting upstairs waiting. So how it works is there's one centralized database. I don't know if you've ever been to like the DMV and you go and you have to put your name and number in like a million times. Like, well, why can't you just take it the first time that I put it in? Well, that's how this works. Everything is put together in one database and everybody just passes the data in a flow instead of having to repeat that entry, and all your documents and all your data lives in one place. So there's no copies and wondering who signed what and where it lives now. So these are just ones that I thought of off the top of my head that we could use, workflows that could use improvement, that use multiple different programs, and we could hopefully consolidate in some of these. So there's both external, so stuff that we reach out with the customer, and then also a lot of internal staff related processes that could be improved. So I looked out at a study that was, it was done for an ERP software project just this year. And for organizations that are over 250 people, they saw an increase of 20% in operational efficiency. And I have that link to that study in there. And then a 15% consolidation of disparate software programs. So ones that we can bring into this and get rid of the licensing for other softwares. So the reason why I'm pitching this to you right now is because pretty soon we're going to be having end of life of other programs and be questioned about, do we want to continue licensing this way? Do we want to move to a cloud situation for different disparate programs? Well, we're going to want this program to play well, to talk to those other programs. So I don't want it to be a sunk cost if we license other programs, like for instance, Office 2019. If we invest in that, which is a pretty big investment, we don't know if an ERP software or any of our other disparate softwares will talk well with it. And then that means continued duplicate data entry and inefficiencies. So that's it.
So,
Can I also add?
yeah, go ahead.
Sorry, thank you.
You can say it best. Go ahead.
Yeah, the other thing I'd like to add for item 78, and in discussions with Nils and with Caitlin, this would not be a project that we would finish in 1 year. This would take 2 to 3 years to complete this project. So I would propose that we would drop the funding down from 400,000 to 100,000 for the first year, with support that the council is on board with funding this project in the future. Having some dollars will, when we reach out to different providers, would prove to them that we're serious about this project. So having some dollars for the first year would help us go out for bid and start working on that process.
Go ahead, Mayor. Oh, I thought you wanted to say something. Okay, so yeah, my view on it is that we should move forward with the ERP. When you see efficiency, that means cost savings. When you see consolidation, that means cost savings. So this is, yeah, we're paying money up front, but overall, this should actually be saving us money on long term. Certainly is going to make it more efficient with less redundancy inside of the city staff to do what they have to do. The only issue is if we do agree that we're going to keep this $100,000 in ARPA funding this year to do this project, that we've pretty much committed to do this. Otherwise, it's money down the drain. Because if we stop at mid-stride, we just threw this money away.
I think some of the things I would like to see then going forward is like, I think that we have put a lot of money into our IT support program with going with MCS and expanding our servers. And we don't ever reflect back on that. So going forward, you know, I'd like to see how much are we spending on our hardware and software support for our computer systems every year. It's a lot of money. And then going forward, what programs we can eliminate. So we'll have those license savings and actually have, because I feel like we've been sold, as a council, we've been sold this over and over that this software isn't working, it's not communicating with someone else's software. And so we invest in this next one that's the best one ever. So I do see this as an excellent solution. I'm glad you're working on moving forward to it, but then let's just make sure that this results in a real solution to the problem that I know staff, all of staff, every single staff person struggles with. So I'm okay with having it in at the lesser amount.
Everyone else? Yes, Jared.
I really think this is, going to move us in, forward into the software, age that we're going to be up to speed. Currently, we lag, as Caitlin referred to. There's times where we're talking between 3 different softwares. I have looked at the budget with Caitlin and Nils as far as ongoing software support, and we pay about $30,000 a year just to Tyler alone. So when we were looking at this was one of the things that I brought up as part of our staff discussion is, okay, we don't want to come up, we want to make sure that when we look at this, we can sustain it. So when we come forward with the operating budget, that would be part of our parameters that we have is what is it going to take every year to make sure we can continue to use it? Because you don't want to come in here and have a sale of a bill of goods and then come in and at budget time, we got to go to the administrator and say, oh, we need X amount. So we want, and maybe that is the right decision, but we want to know that going up front. And I know in talking to Sabrina, this is going to touch so many different departments and everything. There's really going to have to be a multifaceted, multi-department committee to give input on what solution, because it's going to touch all of us as staff members. So it's going to be something that, as Sabrina said, it's not going to be a 3 months and we're going to be here with a report. It's going to be something where there's going to have to be scheduled meetings at a certain intervals and people doing things that are on the committee and trying to come to a decision that, staff can really get behind to bring forward.
Yeah, thank you, Jared. You said that much better. That's what I was trying to say. Thank you.
Okay, so again, we're all agreeing that we should keep that 100K to start moving down an ERP route. And that's ARPA funding. Okay, 79, the fob door controller replacement additions to City Hall.
I'm going to have Nils come up and give you a little information on 79 and 82. And actually we received we went through some of this today to ensure our data was correct. So just go through the door controller replacement, if you will, Nils, and the upgrade to security cameras.
I'll start with the upgrade to security cameras. So June 15th of 22, Internet Explorer is getting retired. So all of our camera systems, except the one at Public Works, require Internet Explorer and ActiveX plugins to function. So essentially, after June, if we don't upgrade the system, the majority of our camera system will no longer be usable.
That's in 2022?
Correct.
Wow, okay. Yeah, and I thought there was also an issue that some of the fob door controllers were malfunctioning too.
So that, touching on that, that's more to do with the controller. So thanks to a lot of work MCS has put in, they've band-aided it together. But it's out of support. The vendor no longer supports it.
Okay.
It's designed on a database that hasn't been supported in over a decade. So getting that upgraded to ensure that our physical security remains functional is, in my opinion, a pretty high priority as well.
Okay.
Looking at the list from the IT perspective, I think the 40,000 for 82 is a must have because it will go, our security cameras will go non-functional, and a minimum of 10,000 toward number 79 is needed just to get the door controller. That would not add any new controllers to any new suites or areas, but 10,000 would at least get us upgraded with the current system that we have.
Okay, well, and again, both of those are ARPA funding potentially. And if we go with 10 versus 25 on 79, that could offset some of the additions that we've already included. What does everyone else think?
I'm okay with 10,000 for 79.
Okay, so that would be 10K.
Does the number 80, the downtown dash park security cameras, is that, those would be new cameras?
Those would be new cameras. Those would be, we'd have to look at a system to, we either have to get a wire under the road at the traffic signals, or we'd probably shoot it remotely from the Great River Landing to Dash Park and just add some security cameras down in that area.
So there's no connection or advantage to doing it at the same time as the city hall?
Correct. There is none. It would be a standalone project. We did as part of the fiber cabling project, install the fiber connection cable to the Great River Landing. So the good thing about that is we can get rid of the current camera controller that's at the Great River Landing. It will run off the one at that as part of the upgrade to the central camp controller system. So that will be that's a good thing. So then I don't think, Dan, right now you can see you got to go down there to see the camera. So you got to physically go on site. Once we do that, you'll be able to see, just like any of the other security cameras in the city hall, you'll be able to go on your computer and look at them. So that'll help the cameras we have existing anyway.
I think we should leave those in, but
Okay, yeah, I agree. Anyone else? Okay, and those are ARPA funding also.
79 and 82 were the ones you're referring to, Mayor?
79, 80
80
and
and 82.
82.
Yeah.
With 79 being reduced to $10,000.
Roger that.
Everyone agrees.
And then 81 and 83 were eliminated last month. Anyone want to revisit those? And then 84 is city administration, government rebranding, but that would also be done simultaneously with Omni Center rebranding, if I remember right, too. So I'm recommending we keep that in. That's also ARPA funding. And again, remember last month we were talking about like ADA compliant website redesign, things of that nature, but we eliminated those for 1 year because we understood that government rebranding really needs to be done before some of that takes place, or we're going to be having to redo double work. Does anyone have a differing view? Okay, so that's in. So before we go back, I just want to say two quick things. One is I did not mention my methodology for the ARPA funding with the dollars at the end. So I believe we have around 2.1 million available to us. Is that right? Eric?
Correct. We have 2.1 million to expend by the end of 2024 by committing it though by end of 2023.
Yes. So we got 5 years to get rid of it. But in this case, it sunsets out. It's not 5 years. What did you say, 2024? 4 years to get rid of it, all right? But it's going to sunset out if we don't spend it. And we know that inflation's coming. So I'm actually, I don't want to spend it all out. But at the same time, I would recommend that we do spend more this year and then a little less, but still more the following year, and have it all gone by year 3 at the latest. Mayor.
Can we just take a little pause and then Sabrina can add some things up and we can stretch our legs?
Sure. 30 more seconds. So when we come back though, since they're here, I'd like to get some input also from Dan and Diane. Specifically, I'd like to hear if there's any projects that we just said we eliminated that you really strongly think we should revisit. Because obviously it's going to come up to the Common Council. And if we'll do that after we come back. But also, if there's things that we retain that you strongly believe we should get rid of, I'd love to hear your opinion since you're here. Okay. All right. So at that point, let's take, it is currently 8:15. Let's be back at 8:25 and we'll start with Sabrina and then go over with Dan and Diana and see if they have any input. Okay.
did.
Seconds early, but everyone's here. So, yeah, let's go ahead and get started.
So far, you guys.
Okay, so if we could start with, I guess Sabrina providing any comments before we see if there's any input that Dan or Diane would like to provide. It's up to you if you want to do it. Yeah, Sabrina.
So with the blue, the blue items on my sheet, which are the ones that we need to reevaluate, we're at 1,490,500. So we need to reevaluate those items. And I'll talk about them as we go through, as we're going back through to wrap around. So without those items included for ARPA funding right now, we're at 681,319.
You say that again?
$681,319. For bonding right now, again, not using those, not looking at those reevaluating items, we're at 2,637,750. So those two numbers are items that we've all agreed on that we should keep in.
Right. Okay. Okay, do either of you two want to speak? Yeah, okay, Dan?
Maybe Eric too.
Well, yeah, sure. I mean, he's usually pretty willing to raise his hand and insert anyway, but yeah. So,
All right, so the big concern, this is a terrible job because there's a lot of good projects that need to be funded and it's always very, very difficult. But so we've heard of the ARPA funds many times tonight, and if that's a tool that we can use to keep under, towards our goal, that's wonderful. But I would remind you that we do not have a working sewer agreement with the city of La Crosse. ARPA funds can be used towards the purchase and construction of a wastewater treatment plant. Until we get that agreement, I think we should be a lot more conservative and save those dollars. In the event that we have to separate and build our own plant, I mean, think of the water bills that our citizens get. They get them 4 times a year. Initially, when we had our review, Jared kind of pointed out what the construction costs would be and what the impact would be to the end water user. And it was significant. And ARPA could be a way to mitigate that increase substantially. And if we're stuck into a position where the city of Onalaska residents are forced to, have to pay for, I think the dividend is what the city of La Crosse called it, for their parks and their library and their parking ramp and everything like that, I cannot support that. And I think that we really should hold on to our dollars until we have some sort of resolution. And Eric, perhaps you can, maybe this is all for naught, but I mean, have we made any progress, or is there anything, does anything look promising in that regard?
Can we discuss if it's not on the agenda, the sewer agreement?
Well, it would have to use with the ARPA funds, which are being spent elsewhere. So I guess my connection would be that maybe we don't want to spend that, or that should.
No, I agree. I actually think it's a good point. I just don't want to violate open meeting law here. So what do you think, Eric?
I think if the question is, should we be adding or subtracting an item, it pertains to the agenda item, which is the capital improvement list.
Yeah.
That's what I have to say. So I'll just defer to Eric if he had any input, and if not, that's fine.
Thanks, Dan. Good comment. Just if we don't make any changes, and that's a huge if, that still leaves us with 1.4, just shy of 1.42 million on ARPA. So that would still be available next year, what have you, to consider however we're going to use it. Just want to make sure we understand that, but I absolutely appreciate what you said. That makes a lot of sense.
Good idea. It's good comment.
Yeah. Ann.
Diane Wolf, 910 Orchid Place. I do want to note for the record too that both Alder Smith and Alder Burmaster are both online. So.
Oh, I didn't know that. Okay, we'll give them a
Also-
chance to speak to them. Thank you.
Wanted to throw that out there. Just a few things. Item 43, which is the pickleball court resurfacing and court addition. I went out and talked to a few people out there after the line item was discussed. There obviously is an awful lot of support. I know there's been discussion about the parks, some of the parks that don't get a lot of use. I'm going to be always advocating to be using our dollars towards those parks that get a lot of activity. And this appears to be one that gets a ton of activity. I thank them all for coming this evening because if we're just left to our own devices, the six of us have to decide in the end what we're going to be spending the money on for the budget and for capital improvements. And I wanted to thank them personally for coming and taking the time this evening and showing up and telling us what they wanted. And a number of people, I have to say, they were surprised about all that was spoken about before we got to their agenda item in the capital improvements list and and so many of them said, I didn't realize that this is what you were talking about. This is what was on your list. And they all had a great deep appreciation. And I believe a sincere appreciation that the job that you all have here to do tonight to pare the list down from 10 million all the way down to 3+. So I think it was an educational experience for a number of the community members. So I wanted to thank them for coming this evening. So this is one, the pickleballs, that I will continue to support. I think it's a great project. They profusely thank Dan Wick for their support. One in particular called you out and they were very, very pleased with Dan's support for the pickleball courts. Item 48. 40
ADA improvements
would be the ADA improvements under parks. I think I will advocate for that. I know that item, I did attend parks when they had that discussion. I would advocate for that. Item 56 and 57. I'd like to hear more this evening from Chief Ashbeck regarding the utility vehicle and the room systems. I know that the one came down from 130,000, I believe, last month to 100 this month. But I guess if I could hear more about that this evening, I really appreciate that. What else? The one concern that I have is how much ARPA money that we are spending. As someone who does not ever let money burn a hole in their own personal pocket, I'm never in a hurry to go out and spend money. I do believe that there's need, but I personally am not in a hurry to spend as much of the money as we can this year. I'd always like to keep a little bit in the reserve and a little bit in the tank because I don't know what's coming up next year. So that's all I have. Thank you for asking, and don't forget about those other two alders.
Thank you, Dan. Eric.
I guess just real quick, Alder Stevens did ask a question. I think it does pertain to, if he's adding a project to the capital list, I feel obligated, I should at least answer. I'll confirm that we do not have an agreement in place yet, and confirm that ARPA is a qualified source of funds for a sewer plant if it ever came to such point that we'd have to build our own.
Okay.
I think Alder Burmaster might like to speak.
I was going to call her next. So Carrie.
Yeah. I just wanted to reiterate what Alder Wolf and Alder Stevens both said about being more conservative with spending the ARPA funds. Because not
Alder
knowing.
Burmaster, but I cannot hear you.
Can you hear me now?
Trying to work the technology here, Carrie, so
Okay.
we can hear you. 1 second.
Can you hear me now, Jared?
No. this. Should- Alder Burmaster, can you hear me?
I can hear you. Can you hear me?
She's lighting up. Nothing's happening.
Hey Jared, this is Tom. Can you hear me?
Speak if he wants to. I mean, see if his end is working then. They can come back to Carrie.
Alder Burmaster did put in the chat that she can hear me, but I cannot hear her.
Is Tom Smith still on?
He's on.
Yeah, I'm on. Can you hear
Tom,
me?
did you want to speak?
Yeah, can you hear me?
We can't hear him neither. He just
No.
tried and we didn't hear him.
Okay. Huh.
Something for them to check. It could be their actual laptop or it could be in the Zoom controls. If it's on their end.
Hey Jared, can you hear me?
I just muted you, Alder Burmaster.
Yeah, I just unmuted.
Try it one
Can you
more
hear me
time.
now?
No, it ain't working.
Hey Jared, can you hear me now?
Okay. We'll move forward and do a little technical research here if we can see if we can get.
Sure. Yeah.
Well,
Okay. We're going to revisit the items that we deferred and we'll see if we can get these technical issues finished before we go final with a recommendation from the Board of Public Works here.
can I suggest that we start with the ARPA?
I was going to go exactly there.
Okay.
I love the Unimind. Good. Yeah, so, yeah, with the ARPA funding, I see a total of 10 deferred items, if I'm counting right, of which two are ARPA funding. And that's number 56 and 57. Is that what you have also?
Correct.
Okay, so let's go to 56 and 57, both of which are within the police department. So Chief, if you could talk to us about the utility vehicle and about the interview room systems.
Good evening. So first off, the utility vehicle. This is something that our current utility vehicle, which is just a basic four-wheeler, ATV, I guess, has very limited use. This age of it, it's just not practical anymore. So the UTV essentially would have room for two people, have the kind of bucket area in the back to be able to haul supplies, all things as like no parking signs, other emergency equipment. So we could use it for off-street trails, whether that's patrolling, rescue. As the city gets more and more off-street trails and different things that squad cars can't get to, we can use that type of vehicle to get to. The variety of special events that we have, parades or fun runs, or there's just a host of things throughout the year that we can use this as traffic control. Our reserve officers can use it to use almost in replacement of a squad car to, at different events like that. There's just a variety of uses that we see a vehicle like this coming into play. Like National Night Out, trying to haul all the supplies back and forth. Our squad cars are so full of gear, it's difficult to haul all the food and pop and all the other stuff to those kinds of special events. So these are all the variety of uses that I see that we would use a vehicle like that. The interview room system. So, we've transitioned to the Axon kind of ecosystem with our body cams and squad videos and tasers and all of that. And so our interview room system is on I'm not going to say antiquated, but it's on a security camera system that is getting to the point where basically we've overloaded our security camera. It's all on the same security camera system as the general security cameras for the police department. And so that system has been failing. We've had MCS try to work with Assistant Chief Miller on trying to fix a solution on that. So it's the perfect timing to try to pull off those 5 cameras off that system into a much more reliable, into the Axon ecosystem, where those rooms, you go to the room, you basically sign into it, activate your recording, and when you're done, you stop it and it gets uploaded into the cloud where the rest of our data gets stored. And so then it's right there ready to be shipped off for, DA's office or any other open records requests. Redacting it is much easier because it's all built through that system. Whereas now officers have to code down on a piece of paper what their interview was. They have to give that to the assistant chief, who then goes into that system, marks that video, downloads that video, then has to upload that video into the cloud. So it's just inefficient. So it makes sense to transition to this. I know it's a high dollar tag item, so I get that.
It makes more sense to do it all at once.
It does. Axon requires them to come on site. I can't get around that. So the more times we have them come on site, of course, probably raises the price tag because of travel costs and whatnot else. So, but if we have to shave some off of that and do it in 2 different times, something is better than nothing. We can try to work with that, but.
I know in my conversations with Chief previously over the last couple of weeks, he said he could, doesn't want to, but he could live with maybe 60,000 to get it started with 2 or 3 of them. However, I don't know that we need to do that. Nickel and diming this when we could use the ARPA and just get it done. You've got, the police are going to do the investigation. But you still have a prosecution to worry about if they're going to charge somebody with a crime. And if we don't give them the right tools to do that, we're risking that it's not going to be successfully concluded. I personally, I think that the Axon interview system is probably something we should strongly consider keeping on. Thoughts from other board members? What do you think?
Yes.
Well, it's a lot of money. If you feel that that's absolutely necessary. But somewhere along the line, when something comes up, we gotta decide what's necessary and what we could probably live without for a while. That would build my faith in how we spend money at all departments. So just my thinking.
So I'll go ahead next. I guess my concern is, I guess it was just suggested limit for the ARPA funds was 500,000 with 3 million bonded for a total of $3.5 million. So I think, looking at where we're at right now, we're already over that for the ARPA funding. And if you add the two numbers together, we're not very far off from our overall goal that we set out for ourselves in the beginning. So I think it just comes down to priority, I guess.
My understanding with the 500,000 is that was based on just taking the 4 years and
Spreading it
dividing
over.
it out. But the recommendation, I believe what I heard from both finance director and city administrator was to actually try to spend this down over 3 years instead of 4, which would change the.
That's where we're gonna be at. I mean,
Yeah,
Yeah, that's where we're currently at. If we.
exactly. Yeah.
I guess I'd be interested to hear from Samantha and Eric about looking at the totals and looking at where we're at, deciding where to go next.
Yep. Go to which setting?
Or Sabrina, did I say Samantha? I'm
Yeah,
sorry.
it's okay.
It
I'll
started with
answer
an S. You
It's-
can call me call me Kevin. Okay, wait, let me think of a different name.
It's late. It's.
Ken.
I just turned it
Eric,
off.
Did you want?
Now maybe I should.
Did either one of you want to put your opinions in here? Eric?
It's always a awkward position because this is a policy document for the council will eventually approve. And with the mayor's approval, final approval to it. It's a policy statement, where do you wish to be? In terms of, I think, best practices, yes, spending it down in 3 years makes the most sense. Not just committing to it, but spending it down. Since we know we have it, and I do know the legislature is also looking at putting restrictions on the use of ARPA funds that we can spend it on, including it just passed the assembly, but to require it to go to workforce housing, a portion to go to workforce housing and things like that. So the sooner that we can actually commit what we like to do it on, the better off we are, and not wait to the last minute.
So do you have concerns if we were to spend 750,000 or whatever? I mean, doing more still out of the first year?
The longer we can spread it out, the better off we are when it comes to our debt service payments over time. If we could actually do it 4 years, that would be best, but I don't think we should risk that 4th year. So what we can spread out on an even basis over the next 3 years makes the most sense to me. But committing it to be spent so we're not borrowing is the number one priority. Keeping in mind, again, that there may be other requests for it, but the ARPA funds, but using it in a planned manner over the next 3 years is my recommendation. And if that's 750,000, each year until we spend the 2.1, then that works too.
Sabrina?
I would agree.
Okay. So
Other-
try to keep it to about where we are now.
Yeah, we're at 681 right now.
Alder not, I think we could give Alder Burmaster a chance again. We may be able to.
Oh, okay, she can be able to talk now?
Can you talk to us, Carrie?
Sure. Can you hear me now?
We got you now. Thanks, Nels.
Good.
Sorry
Yeah,
about that.
just, no problem. I just would like to add, just kind of to reiterate what Alder Wolf and Alder Stevens have already said, that I would like to be a little more conservative in the spending of those ARPA funds without knowing what we're going to be needing those for the next couple of years. And the only other item that I was a little bit disappointed in getting cut out of here was number 47, which is the Rowe Park restroom replacement. And the reason Parks and Recreation Committee had put that in there is because there is no handicap accessible bathroom in the park. So there is no place for anybody who would have that need to be able to use that. I know we were talking about number 48, the ADA improvements, and saying we haven't done any of those for a while, but that actually would be an ADA requirement also. So if you're looking at things for ADA requirement, I said that is specifically an ADA requirement. And I think it's very important that we get those restrooms so they are handicap accessible. Thank you.
Thanks, Carrie.
Alder Smith, I don't know if you're still.
Yeah, I'm on. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Can.
Okay, perfect. Yeah, I may kind of reiterate the same thing I think everyone else said. I like our conservative approach. Been sitting here looking through it, made some tough decisions. I also agree that ADA has got to be a priority. We've kind of pushed that back on the back burner for a number of years, and I think we have to show that we are making some progress. I think the IT upgrades and some of the software things we talked about are really important. And that we should continue to take that conservative approach on not knowing what the future is going to bring, and spend as the minimal as we can over the next couple of years. And I think the roofs are, I think Steve mentioned it well, that, you know, roofs have a long-term impact if we don't address them before they become a bigger issue. So I think a priority of getting some of those roofs repaired is also important. But basically, I support basically everything you guys have done so far. So tough job, but it's been pretty well laid out. Thank you.
Thank you, Tom.
Thank you.
So if you don't mind my asking, just considering what the other alders said, for comparison, Sabrina, if you add in the 56 and 57 from the police department, which is a ARPA, and the 47 that Carrie is suggesting for the regular bond, where would we be at?
For ARPA, we would be at, if you include, you said including the utility vehicle and
56 and 57, yeah.
Yep. So then for ARPA funding, we would be at 798,819. And for the ADA, hold on one second.
It's like 100,000, so 2.7.
So 130,000 total with the 47,
130,000.
48. Yeah. So,
So do you have it, Sabrina?
Yep, I do. Just one second.
And then the overall, the adding those two numbers together would be the next.
So we'd be at 2,767,750 for bonding. And in total, we'd be at 3,566,569.
So what I'd recommend here is that right now I'm just talking the ARPA funding still. I'd like to address that first, is that if we defer the utility vehicle for a following year and revisiting back with the Omni Center to further ride on floor machine. And use that to help offset a little bit. I'd still like to get $60,000 worth of the interview rooms done. I'd like to move forward on that with at least some of them so that we can have more efficient, I guess, interview systems. Trying to see if there's anywhere else I could recommend that we try to offset some of those costs.
I feel like.
Wasn't it noted that that floor machine was a necessity?
Well, we agreed that we should keep it on at the time, but he does have a machine. We this would be the second year we'd be deferring it, so we'd just be using the old one still.
I'm open to discussion, but I feel like that additional 100,000 just puts me way past my comfort level. I'm not really comfortable with the 681,000. I think that's too much. But then looking at the list, I'm not sure what to take off, so. Personally, I would just as soon either stay with our first number for ARPA or backpedal. But under no circumstances should the two combined be over 3.5, in my opinion.
So I guess, yeah, I mean, I'm assuming, Chief, that you can make do with the current utility vehicle. It's not, I got it, it's not as flexible as this one would be because you wouldn't have carrying capacity, but you can make do for another year.
I mean,
I guess, which would you, if we can use that and maybe some other things as a trade-off, would you rather have the interview rooms?
Certainly. The one thing I was thinking about was, I guess if you guys approve of the concept, maybe through the sale of a vehicle next year, I can work the purchase of that utility vehicle through something like that with undesignated funds, I would come back to council with that at that time, but that I could probably, if you support the idea of the vehicle, I can support you pulling that project off of this list now, and then I try to work that in somehow next year.
Okay, so let's pull the utility vehicle off. That's 17.5 out of ARPA.
Well, it wasn't on, the 17.5 wasn't on our original ARPA number. That, the utility.
Oh, that's right.
we were
Yeah, no,
holding
you're
on.
right. It was not. I agree. All right, yeah. So, yeah, does anyone have an issue with pulling that off permanently and eliminating it for this year? Okay, can we revisit the ride on floor machine and also revisit number 72, which is one of the air handlers, but that's the first time request for this year, not one of the older air handlers, which is under City Hall. I guess, Brian,
I think I'm going to reiterate that there's a gazillion of these and we have to replace some all the time.
no, I got that, and there's still others still in there, is what I'm getting at. Some of the previously requested ones, like number 63, which is 2 air handlers for the Omni Center. For the City Hall, this is the first one that, or first time they've been asking for it. I don't know. I mean, I just really think that we need to start moving forward with getting the interview room systems up to date. That's all.
Can I ask Dan a question? How many, no? Okay. How many air handlers do we have in the city hall? I know Brian said 8 at the Omni. How many in City Hall? Yeah, that's the word, right? I know numbers. I don't know air handlers.
Talking about the VFDs.
We have, in the City Hall building, we have 4 air handlers, but on those 4 air handlers, 3 of those have 2 VFDs on them. They have an air intake and one on the outside air coming in too.
Thank you. You have to
So
tell
less
me
than a
what
gazillion.
VFD is sometime, but
So if I can just speak, questioning, I believe, and sorry, I said to step out, talk to a few residents earlier, but I believe 63 and 64 are currently in on your list. In talking to Brian, it's a higher priority for us to have on the floor, the ride on floor machine of 64 than 63. I know 63 has been on a couple of years, but it's the ride on floor machine's used multiple times a day with multiple events going on. And having a machine that's going to be, that we can use daily is a higher priority for us.
So I guess then, all right, so I'll stop arguing about the ride on floor machine. How about number 63 and either number 66 or number 72? I know that Mary had mentioned that we need to do something for the library. That was the only thing they actually even had on it, if I remember right.
That's because the roof just got replaced.
Right, exactly. So, and my understanding is painting is not a mitigation, preventative future cost. It's aesthetic. And maybe we can defer that and the air handler, and that gets us 47 out of 60,000 towards an interview room. I mean, are you just adamantly opposed to doing the interview rooms at all this year?
Not at all.
Well, no, I mean, I'm just trying to get an honest conversation here. I mean, if I'm,
I think it needs to happen at some point, but.
no, I said this year is what I'm saying.
Oh, this
And
year.
it started at, at
Well,
least-
okay, so looking at it for this year, I just feel like it's a larger item. It's $100,000. I considered at our previous meeting, if we could try to break it into smaller pieces, and I don't feel like it makes sense to do that. And I feel like we'd have to cut out some other significant thing in order to make it happen, or a whole bunch of things that are probably also really important.
Yeah, but are they as important? That's my
And
question.
that's what the committee has to decide. I'm just one. I'm
So,
one person out of 5.
yeah, so I'm looking at 63 and 66 together, that's 47,000, which gets us most of the way there.
Alder not, I maybe refer to Dan a little bit, but the lowest of the projects in the IT area that was the Dash Park security cameras, downtown cameras. I mean, it has been, it says new, but it's something that has been on the docket for a couple of years. It just hasn't been in the budget. But if I had to choose between those IT projects, I mean, that's something that we don't currently have. Where air handlers we currently have, those have to get
I
replaced.
see.
So that I guess I'd refer to Dan, but
And that's 100% true. You know, that the Dash Park items are something that we get asked about frequently from a resident to when and why we don't have cameras there. But maintaining what we currently have with the air handlers and things, I think is more important to, you know, when push comes to shove.
Okay. That makes sense. Now, Mayor, you said it doesn't make sense to do it incrementally for the Axion room systems. Why do you
I
believe
thought
that?
that's what the chief said.
Chair, I had a thought on the Dash Park cameras. I know that the Great River Landing cameras were funded through tourism dollars. If it came out of the general fund, is that, maybe this is a question for the city administrator, could we fund the Dash Park cameras through another source? So.
Is that possible? Probable.
We could do through equipment replacement, but
Sabrina has an excellent point that sort of in line with what my approach would be. That kind of equipment probably is best coming out of equipment replacement funds. There are some questions, especially with the Tourism Commission and the use of tourism funds should be somewhat heads in beds to a large degree. I'd steer clear from using tourism funds at this point, but I think the equipment replacement is a viable option.
That, what was the last portion of that? I'm sorry.
It's a viable option for those cameras, the equipment replacement fund.
Oh, okay. Okay, so I'll keep that in mind. So looking at.
Meaning if you take it off of here, you can add it through the equipment replacement fund later on. It would not be part of the capital improvements, it'd be equipment replacement.
Roger. So if we were to remove, what I'm recommending then is removing 66 and 80, which is 50,000. And then maybe adding 10,000 more onto the current ARPA. That would get us to the 60,000. So back in, Chief, what does that do? Does it make sense? Does it make sense to do this incrementally at all? Am I like fighting upstream here?
No, I greatly appreciate that. I would really like some funding in there. If we could do the 60, that would be great. We can pick the most highly used rooms, complete those. It would make our life much easier. And then look at possibly doing that in the following year. But if we can get the most used rooms, frequent used rooms in this new system, that would be wonderful.
What is anyone, are you comfortable? Are you uncomfortable with taking 66 and 80 off to do that? And then that would still increase 10,000 more on our ARPA funding this year. What do you think?
I mean, I said what I thought. What do the other people think? I'm only one person.
I think the cameras in the interview rooms for the police department is more important than the Dash Park security cameras and probably painting of the building. I think if you can do it incrementally, I think that would be something. And from the IT standpoint, I know we have problems from the IT standpoint with that data storage, and it would just blend better from IT standpoint to be all under the Axion system.
So you agree?
I would agree.
So it's number 66 getting removed,
And number 80.
number 80 getting removed.
And then number 57 funded to the tune of 60,000. Which does add 10,000 more onto our total ARPA fund for expenditure for this year. So get over here and catch up on.
So then we're at $691,319.
All right. So how do we feel on the ARPA funding then with that? Is that satisfactory to everybody, the 691, or is that still extreme? We should look for somewhere else to cut.
I don't know what it would be at this point.
What's that?
I don't know what we would cut out of there at this point.
Yeah, I'm getting tough here too. I agree.
But that brings our total then to $3.3 million.
Are we good? Are we comfortable with ARPA funding on that? What do you think, Sabrina?
Yeah, that's fine.
Okay. Eric? Okay.
Sabrina, what do those two add up to total? Where we're at?
So I'm at 691,319 for ARPA. And for bonding, if adding on the parking, the bathroom and the ADA, I'm at 2,767,750.
That's with the 130.
Yep, that's with the 130.
So what's the total of those two?
The total is $3,459,069.
Okay, and then the other areas we wanted to revisit that were part of general fund 20-year bonding first one was 2D, the East Avenue Sidewalk Connect for $121,000. Again, my view is not to fund that, but and to defer it till next year.
Is that okay, Jared?
Yeah, the new road project has been completed on Sand Lake Road, so this is the last connection to be able to walk that section. It's not something, I guess I haven't fielded any calls as of late. We have previously.
Is it more important than the bathroom at Roe Park?
And if you're walking along East Avenue, or you're trying to go to the bathroom in Roe Park.
Well, again,
Just trying to put it in perspective.
well, the sidewalk connection again would be new. And versus again, my reasoning that we need to do A through C is maintaining and improving what we already have.
It is something that's not there today. So I think as far as a sidewalk connection for the city, it is an important sidewalk connection. It's a north-south route. It's the only spot through there. Can it wait a year? Could wait a year, but I think it does need to get into the mix at some point.
I agree with that. The question is, can we
But
define?
I totally see that, if we have with all the events we have at Roe Park, and I get Dan could shelter rentals, different events that happen, fleece run, all those things that happen at Roe Park. And we try and, other than maybe Van Riper Park, Roe Park is probably our next flagship park. And then not have a bathroom that wasn't almost, I know those plans from those bathrooms were installed and the sewer was put in there in about 1990. So those bathrooms have not had anything done to them in that amount of time. So,
Right, and the bathroom that we would look to replace would be the one up on top of the hill. We actually leave that bathroom open with the amount of disc golfers and things that we have and the people walking in the park. So having an accessible restroom facility there, could just set us up for the multiple people that are using it.
We don't disagree.
Okay, so does that mean that what I'm hearing is that we're in agreement that we can defer to D another year? Is that what I'm hearing?
which number?
2 Delta,
2D, that sidewalk connection.
East Avenue Sidewalk Connection for $121,000.
I think it has to where we're at budgetarily. So I think I would recommend that we remove it for a year.
Okay.
Just try to remember that for next year though.
Yep, absolutely. Well, it'll show that next year that will be the 3rd year for consideration too, and that has some power to it. So yeah. At least it does on my mind when I look at some of these older projects. All right, so moving on to the next one that was deferred for conversation was number 5, off-street trail paving and maintenance. And can we go with a lesser sum than 105,000? I know I'd planned in mind for 50, but you know, again, Jared, what do you think?
You know, we really need to do some maintenance on the trails. I mean, if we could even, make it 20,000 and just do something to keep those trails up, it would be good.
Didn't you say they had to be paved too? I guess I'm in favor of keeping the whole amount. I think if we're gonna be doing maintenance, why don't we pave it there? But I'm not an engineer, so.
No, and there's the trail we're looking at paving in particular, Dan's gonna come up because his staff actually maintains the trail. It's hard to snowplow. Because there's so many dips and divots.
Right, it's the one by Crossing
Sam's
Meadows,
Club.
by Sam's Club and things there. The trail, if you go on it, is so rough. It's very hard for us to snowplow. 2, when we did the ADA assessment, this was an area that is not accessible because of the condition of the trail that's in, that we have.
So could it be done for a lesser amount?
Well, that's a
Or
long
that's the
trail. I
amount
mean,
to do the
that's
whole
an
section.
estimate that they gave us, you know, that's a long, when you look at going from, you know,
It's from Sam's Club all the way over behind Taco Bell.
Okay.
so, I mean, yeah, we could do a section of it. I mean, that's, you know, but that's,
No, I think Sabrina's right. I'm gonna do it.
Eric?
I don't use that trail. Dan just discussed. I am a frequent user of the one along Sand Lake Road. And you see lots of people using those trails for, you know, healthy living, exercise. It's not really, I don't think, used for connecting points for businesses, but I definitely see it as a quality of life issue for people that do live in the area. These off-street trails, I think are a great addition to the city, and I think we need to maintain them. So I would advocate for maintenance of the trails as much as possible.
Okay, so we'll put that one in.
That's fine. So for the full 105? Okay. All right.
Looking at our budgetary constraints, I would recommend we remove number 8. I say that begrudgingly. Once again, I'll go back to the progress we've made, but I think we have made progress. Just so we understand that at some point we'll have to do more streets again.
I have no issue with that. I was going to recommend that based upon what we just did with number 5. Anyone else have concerns? Okay. Next was number 37.
16.
Yeah, 16.
Sorry. Yes, number 16, sorry. Yes, 12th Avenue South Stormwater Outfall Repair. That is the initial request for this for $30,000.
I think we should put it back in.
Sorry, what did you say?
Yeah, because I think if we don't, they'll have to just repair it anyways and it'll end up costing more unless you disagree.
No, it's definitively hazard.
Okay. Hazard is pretty strong language, so yeah, let's leave it in unless somebody else has an issue. All right. Then next is 37. The planting zone, urban forestry.
7.
37?
Yep.
Yeah.
Did we take out 27?
I had that, we kept that one in.
I heard that was in, yeah. That was already in.
Thank you.
So 37, again, I think this is one where we can certainly accept some risk and defer it. It's, we got some urban forestry going with 36. I think that we can hold off on that for a year. What do you think, Jared? Well, actually, what do you think, Katie? I'm sorry.
Yeah, we'll make it work.
Right, Katie, agree? Okay. All right. Next is number 41 with the fire station. So again, I understand where Chief was going with this. I'm not comfortable with committing money to fire station number 2 until I get a full staff study on how this is going to be manned in the future. We got a kind of an almost like an abstract, if you will, from the chief, but I'd like more detail on that. What I don't want to do is to commit to buying land, which basically commits us to in the future sometime buying another fire station, and then finding out that we also have to increase manpower because there's something we didn't know. So that's kind of where I'm going, Chief, is I just want more information on that. What do you think?
Well, I know you guys have to make a lot of decisions, a lot of cuts tonight, and you know from the previous meeting how important this is to our department, our response times and protecting that area. As well as I can say is we are increasing our part-time staffing. We have 2 part-time members starting on the 8th, and we will be hiring additional part-time early next year. As I stated last time, my vision would be with now our increased staffing to 5 on each shift. We would have 3 at our current station and 2 at the station on the eastern side of our response district. Part-time members and full-time for fire calls or backfill, they would respond to the closest station. So I do not see a need to add additional staffing. Otherwise, I probably wouldn't have pursued it this long, but I understand you're looking for a staffing study, but to me, it seems kind of cut and dry. Our minimum staffing is 4, so we would have 2 at each station. They would respond to emergencies in their district or together if there's fires, as I talked about the last meeting. If there is a fire call, then obviously we have a all-call page for everybody to respond to the closest station to get apparatus. In the meantime, the full-time that are staffing those stations would be responding. Now, you wouldn't have probably 4 on a fire engine responding out of each station because of the staffing, but you would have a minimum of at least 4 responding immediately with 2 apparatus to any fire and emergency.
Sense.
Oh, how set are you on? I know this has been proposed for a long time.
It's been in for a very long time.
Well, because, I mean, we would have to find, this is $500,000. We would have to find a way to pay for this through other funding. I don't see how we can add 500 right back on to, I don't know.
I understand. I can only present to you guys what our plan is, the direction we're trying to go and get to, and it's up to all of you. And I do understand this process, starting at whatever it was, 9 million and going down to 3 million or wherever you're at right now, but it's pretty much in your hands.
Do you know what the land value would be of where you want this? So is that 500,000 pretty accurate of what it would cost you?
Just for the property.
Just, yeah, right.
Looking at land in the east side, there's not a lot of land there. It's a lot of commercial property. So you'd be trying to find the right piece there. The big catch is, of course, is as land does come available for sale without anything budgeted, there's no immediate way of making an offer on behalf of the city to acquire that land. We learned the hard way when it came to pursuing a building for Parks and Rec, how fast you have to move sometimes, and even as quickly as we moved, we still move too slow to acquire that. So if the city was serious of making that purchase, having money set aside for land acquisition, up to a certain dollar amount would then allow us to bring something to council at a certain point in time to say, here's the land, here's what would make sense. If it's all the guidelines you've established for us, we've funded it to know we can go ahead and make the purchase. If it's not funded there, then that does extend the time frame for that to happen when the parcels do come available.
So the concern I have, this is kind of like the ERP where I mentioned that if we commit to the $100,000 for the ERP, we're really committing to the 400,000 on the long term. We're going to have to, otherwise it's money again down the drain. This is similar to that. If we end up doing a land acquisition for a fire station, we're not committing 500,000. We're committing several million because we're then, what that's saying is that we're going to build sometime in the near future a second fire station, which is not going to even be six figures. That's going to be a seven-figure project almost certainly. Would you agree with that?
Jared, you ran numbers on that.
We had a cost estimate run for a fire station of size that would be a 2 apparatus fire station with living quarters and things. And the estimated cost of construction for the station was right at 2 million, but you need to design it and buy the land on top of that.
Yeah. So, yeah, I'm hearing that you are confident you have enough firefighters and enough equipment for the station if we were to get it. But we're still looking at then somewhere approaching, because you said design isn't in that either. That's, yeah, so we're probably talking upwards now, getting close to, when you look at land, a building and design, we're committing to close to a $3 million project. Yes, Mayor.
And I think, I mean, in my opinion, this is something we've been looking at for a long time because we know that it needs to be done. It's a known. We know we're having back-to-back calls. We know we need to be deploying 2 groups of responders. And we believe we have enough equipment and staff to do that right now. But as always, you know, the properties that we're looking at, that we're targeting are expensive area. I mean, we're talking about prime area that's centrally located so that it can service. And those areas aren't going to be around, you know, maybe even 5 years from now. And some of the properties we looked at previously are now gone. The opportunity was lost. So I don't want to lose this opportunity. But I also think, as I said before, we're already beyond or we're right at that threshold where we shouldn't spend anymore. I don't think we can go back and cut a bunch of stuff. And I also feel the weight of this wastewater treatment plant lack of a contract weighing on me. And so I feel like until that is worked out, we're not really at a place to move forward. But there could be other things that we explore, like maybe we could lease something in the area. Maybe, you know, maybe there's other opportunities that we can explore in the meantime while we're working out some of these other issues. So that's where my thoughts are. Yeah.
So you're recommending that we defer this for now?
I would say we should defer it for now.
I
You can always, you know, and if an opportunity arose as a city, we do have other ways to come up with money all of the sudden. For example, we have looked at other properties for different reasons that came on the market, and we could have went ahead and tried to purchase those. We have a different way to do it outside of the budget. So I think we should take this out for now.
Okay.
But keep in mind that at some point we will need to do this.
Roger. I just don't see how we'd have to go back and restack one to end list everything in order to try to come up with that kind of money. I just don't think that would be wise at this stage in the game. And one want to fight right now that's okay. All right, let's remove that. So then next. Is number 68. I know I had that on my approved list. That's emergency management generator
Okay,
upgrade.
hold on a second.
Are we for sure keeping 47 and 48? Are we putting 47 and 48 back in?
I thought we were gonna,
Okay.
okay, I thought if we were gonna put in 47, the restroom replacement, I thought then we would not include 48. So
I'm
we're
good
doing,
with-
because
I would
then we're
concur with
doing,
that.
we are doing.
I'm good with that.
That would be a 30,000 adjustment.
Yeah, so yes to 47, no to 48. I'm good with that.
Thank you.
I mean, we all want to make progress and
Thank you. So then back to 68. I had that emergency management generator on mine, but again, I don't know how we're going to be able to do that this year. I really want it. We really have got to figure out a way to do this because it's a piece of equipment we hope we never need. But if we ever need it and we don't have it, we're going to wish we had. So it's one of those low probability, high risk things like we had earlier. I just don't know how we can get it. What do you think?
can't do it.
What's that?
Can't do it.
Yeah.
I would have picked the fire department before that.
All right, let's remove 68 then. Okay. I'm thinking we've covered everything that was deferred. Am I missing something? If not, what are the new totals, Samantha? Or sorry, Sabrina.
That's my fault. Sorry. I
Rena.
put it in your head. Is it 691,319 for the ARPA?
Yep,
I think
and
that's
bonding, we'd be at 2,872,750.
For bonding, and then what the total
Total?
is?
$3,564,069.
I'm actually good with it because I know when we were talking 3 to 3.5, I honestly thought we were talking about bonding. I didn't think we were talking about anything else.
Well, this is where I'll make a slight argument for the generator.
Okay.
Only because it's just being new and it being on the list for the last few years. I think if we decide we could borrow for that, we would still be under our bonding that we were last year and some years prior. With rates as low as they are right now, I think it could be done. But
What would that put us at for the 20-year bonding if we included that?
knew you were going to ask me that, and I didn't have the number ready. Give me 1 second. It put us at $3,307,750.
What was the, again, my understanding when we had the discussion last month was that our bonding, we wanted to be between 3 and 3.5. Am I wrong on that, or is it the total sum?
I thought that was our discussion in the past, but ideally, we'd like to be under 3.5 in total, but if we wanted to get another project off of a sizable project off of our list, with the rates being low, I think it could be done.
Eric?
Yeah, the number of, say, 3.5 million, just to make round figures here, is sort of the standard that we've been. We've been higher, we've been lower. When we bought the Quint for the fire department, we were substantially higher that one particular year. I do remember the discussion about using $500,000 a year, so we don't have to go to the state trust fund to borrow. Will help flatten our debt servicing, which is the chart that's being put together to show, what the short-term repayments do to us versus the long-term repayments do to us. So my recollection was we did not want to go borrow state trust funds, but we were comfortable borrowing 20 years for the same amount. And I could be incorrect, but that's my recollection of it.
Currently, we have 0 state trust funds committed on what we've discussed this year.
Correct. The other option is we don't bond for it. And if something happens, then we're going to have to use reserves, or we're going to have to use ARPA funding to pay for it if it dies in the next year. Goes down.
I thought you were talking about the generator, right?
Right. If something were to happen and we have to replace the generator, if we haven't bonded for it, to bond in the middle of the year and go through that process would be pretty time consuming. So we'd either have to use reserves to pay for that $435,000 expense, or use ARPA funding throughout the year if that were to happen. So it's a risk, or
Other than that,
Steve?
Yes, Eric, sorry.
in terms of the land acquisition, I just made a statement that not having money set aside really slows down the process of acquiring land. And I stand behind that, but it occurs to me that one of the challenges we'd face if we do add the land acquisition back into borrowing is we also can't borrow for something that doesn't have a purpose. I think we have a challenge actually going to Moody's and say we're going to borrow 500,000 to hopefully acquire a piece of land. They're going to want to know what piece of land, where it is, what's the size of it, what we're going to put on that land. So I think perhaps the better approach, instead of borrowing for a potential future purchase that we hope occurs, and when you do borrow 20 years, you do have to expend those funds for the purpose of is designed within a very short period of time, 2 years, I believe it is. Perhaps the best approach for that would be for the council to commit to a land acquisition and use our reserves instead. And then we do approach the council if such a piece of land that fit your guidelines came to be. But that would kind of solve that problem of forcing us to expend those funds within that 2 years on a piece of land that may not be ideal for the station.
And I think that makes sense. It's more flexible. However, I think that personally, if that opportunity arises and we spend reserves to get land, that we're committing ourselves that in the future, we've got a budget for building a station, not using reserves for that. I mean, literally budgeting for it. So
I guess my point would be that on this list, in my mind, it makes more sense to pull that off from a borrowing list and do it out of other functions as things can become available and let the council make a decision at that point in time.
So what do we think then? Yeah, I mean, we already agreed that we could pull that, but of course that was before the generator conversation came up. So, I mean, what's the board think as far as, you know, potentially using reserves to purchase land for the fire station if the right land comes available? What do we think about adding the generator on and going up to the 3.4 and change million total borrowing for the year? It's higher than what I wanted, but I guess I'm willing.
It was just a suggestion. I'm not for, against, just looking at the numbers and the rates where we're at for bonding. If we wanted to add it, it would keep us below what we borrowed last year and even the year before for bonding.
Thoughts? Jim?
I agree with your thought process for the future. You know, because you run into something catastrophic, you should have it, but it's a decision everybody has to agree on.
Yeah. We take risk another year that we won't have a major natural disaster.
I mean, and we have other things like the chiller at the Omni Center and the AC unit.
I think we kept the AC unit on, correct?
The AC unit is already, that's already a.
But you make a great point with the chiller too. If something happened, we'd either have to replace it or decide not to have it anymore.
I mean, and the same argument would follow what they made for the AC unit, that it would be difficult to get
probably
parts and repair done.
Jared, what do you think?
Projects are never gonna go down. You know, I'm one of the main architects behind having to compile this with various staff members, assistants. And it's always tough. I mean, there's projects in the budget that good projects that don't get done and merit to them. So the more projects that we can take off the list, as long as we've had that discussion and we feel good that we can present that to the public during a public hearing, on our capital improvements budget, and we can show with our finance director that we're being prudent and it works within our budgetary constraints, I think, I think it just moves us forward. But I also understand we gotta live within our means, so.
A tough one.
A lot of silence. I mean,
Too long ago, we didn't think we'd get a lot of water around here, and we can too.
yeah. Yeah, that was,
There's 100 years, so.
yeah, that was a torrential rain that you'd see in the rainforest, yeah.
Just as a side note, would it be the council, we should take the budget forward to council for public hearing at the council meeting? Do we want to move forward the budget we have proposed up to this point and then discuss at the council meeting with all the alders whether they would be in favor of adding the generator back in?
Yeah.
Or do you want it in there and then discuss it with it in?
That's fair.
I think we're at that point where, it would be good for, the alders and the mayor to distribute their feelings all at once, and then we could have a budget that everyone stands behind going to public hearing.
So let's, my recommendation is that we stick with the budget we just currently have and then open for discussion whether or not we want to include the generator to increase. What do you think?
Well, I think we would just forward the budget that we have because it would already be up for discussion with the council, what they wanted to do.
Yeah.
We wouldn't need to identify that specifically, as far as I know.
That's correct. I mean, you'll have the list of the strike throughs of things that are not on the budgets, and then alders can decide to add them in or take things that are in or out themselves.
And we took the notes of what they recommended us, so.
Yeah, and I think we listened to them too. I mean, made action on it, so.
So I'll make a motion that we move forward the 2022 capital improvement budget to council.
Of the 2,872,750.
The last version.
Yeah, without the generator. Yeah.
Yep. I'll second.
Have a motion to move forward the capital improvements projects and budget from Mayor Smith, seconded by Sabrina Steger. Any discussion?
Just as a clarification, that would include the 691, 319 in ARPA funds too.
Yes.
Thanks, Jared.
As well as the other sourced items of 597,600.
And I just want to make sure for clarification, does that mess up anything for the public posting? With having the hearing, if council were to make a change?
We would just make the change that night.
Yeah. We'll post.
The night of the public hearing.
Right, because we'll have to make other.
I was just kind of thinking through the logistics, if that happens, okay.
Any other discussion? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. Item number 9B, set date and time of public hearing.
Our next scheduled Board of Public Works meeting would be December 7th. So I guess I would recommend that we have the public hearing on December 7th.
Is that good? We don't need to go earlier with anything special? Eric?
No, what can be a little confusing for the public at times to understand, the expenses here, anything that we're borrowing for does not impact the 2022 budget. The debt servicing would impact our 2023 budget. So prior to the improvements of the capital improvements, we'll actually approve the 2022 budget at council meeting late next week, hopefully, if all goes well. And then later on, we'll meet to approve the capital improvements budget itself. So it does come after the budget, but that's okay. It's designed to be that way.
Okay. Well, then I'll move that we have the public hearing on the capital improvements projects and budget on December 7th at 6:30 with the regularly scheduled Board of Public Works meeting.
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion passes. Okay, now we move on back to item number 5, where we will continue. What's that?
Good work.
Yeah, where we will continue on with the remainder of the agenda, which I do want to say is not other garbage. Anyway, so number 5, snow and ice control policy. Jared.
Thank you. Just bringing forward the snow and ice control policy. This is our guiding document for snow and ice control within the city. Not a lot of changes from previous years. If you roll in, just goes through the hierarchy of streets. Item number 9 is our maintenance schedule. We do 24-hour service on some of the hills. If we get called up by police staff, we do try to perform maintenance service on our primary routes from 4 a.m. to 8 p.m. And then local streets are from 6 a.m. to 3 p.m. Or as an emergency. So just good information here, just good items for the public to know. If you do go to the first map, the de-icing routes map, which is the red streets with some blue streets in the background, those are our primary streets. So those are either the collectors, arterials within the city, and also the unusual topography or areas where, we have hills and things such as Green Coulee, Grandview Boulevard, Alton Country Club, Elmwood Hills, things like that. So it has our plow routes. It has what areas we do with cul-de-sacs. That would be a new one that we did just add, and that's one I'll go to is the cul-de-sac map. So if you look, there's an east and a west. There's a lot of green and red dots on the cul-de-sac map, but we are fortunate that we have purchased another loader in the last few years. We still rent out end loader. So we have the right equipment to do that job, but it is a whole nother service in itself besides just plowing streets. So with that, I just open up for questions, if any. Other than that, we'll just move forward with the policy as we have in the past.
Do you need it approved?
It would be good to have a motion to place it on file.
I move that we approve the snow and ice control policy.
I'll second.
Movement to approve and place on file the snow and ice policy by Mayor Smith, seconded by Sabrina Steger. Any discussion? All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion passes. Item number 6, right-of-way negotiation services for East Avenue Mini Roundabout Project. Jared.
Thank you. In your packet tonight, I have included a proposal for $6,940 for right-of-way services for the negotiation and acquisition of properties. Not actually, we're only buying a few square feet of property, but we have temporary limited easements and utility releases to get for the project. This is for the East Avenue Riders Club Mini Roundabout, which has the 90% safety funding for construction. So Right-of-Way Professionals has done multiple projects for us, and they actually did the right-of-way acquisition for the Riders Club Road project 3 years ago. So that's part of the reason we wanted to use them again.
Move we approve for $6,940.
Second.
Move to approve by Mayor Smith, seconded by Alder Jim Olson. Any discussion? All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion passes. Item number 7, Paisley rating of city streets.
Thank you. In your packet tonight, we do have the latest phaser ratings. This is every 2 years. We rate city streets. Our information systems manager, Caitlin, did work on this. We're out with city staff rated streets. I would just go to the graph that's in your packet tonight. There's a color graph that's in your packet, and what I would point out is this has data going back to 2013 through 2021. And if the thing that stands out to me is if you go to the 9 and 10 bar column, we were at 5% of our streets were 9s and 10s back in 2013, and when we've consistently grown, so now we're at 20%. And accordingly, if you look back at the 3s and 4s, we were in that 20 to 25% range, and now we're down in the 5 to 10% range. So some of those middle columns come and go up and down, but those 3 to 4s and 9s to 10s, I think really show what we've done with our city streets. So it's a testament to the pavement maintenance we do, the work our public works staff does to maintain the streets, and just even in construction methods over the last 40 years of our city streets.
Yeah. And yeah, pointing out again that, as you mentioned earlier, that last year and to a large extent, and this year to a lesser extent, we're taking a little risk. What we really want to watch on this in the out years is to see if those trends reverse, because that would be a real indicator that we need to prioritize street paving more than what we have been. I'll move that we place on file.
Second.
All right, moving by myself to place on file, seconded by Jim Olson. All those, or any discussion? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. Number 8, update on leaf vacuum services.
We are having our contractor, solid waste contractor, Harder's Quick Cleanup, go through the city performing leaf vacuum service. They are, after this weekend's warm weather and getting some leaves down, they're starting to fall behind. With that, if you look at the leaves that have come down, we're still awaiting. Every year is a different year when it comes to leaf vacuuming. It's Mother Nature cannot be predicted every year, and we're going to have some leaves coming down late, I believe. If we do not see extreme freezing temperatures or snow, and we've got decent weather into Thanksgiving and beyond, we may extend the service an extra week, which we have budgeted. But that will be dependent on what we have for weather and to see what we're at with service. No matter what, we will extend at a minimum the bag pickup and the bin pickup until it's not feasible that people can get rid of leaves. So even if we do have the leaf vacuum service stop at some point due to just what the conditions are, we will try and extend the bag pickup and their pickup of their automated cart, grass clipping cart as long as possible.
How do we notify the residents that they're going to have additional time for their lawn waste?
In the recycler, we intentionally actually put end of season now instead of putting a date because it varies from year to year. But we will be updating the recycling hotline. We'll be updating the website, and people will generally that want to have the leaf vacuum service will generally be looking at the website to see where they're at. And once we will be updating that with once we have determined a final date of service, we will update that website for that. So, and typically that's a service that people are eager to have, so they're willing to call to find out those services. We'll also can put it on our city Facebook page, the Public Works Facebook page, have it shared between those, but people are pretty good about checking in the ones that really want the service.
So you're generally thinking that the vacuum service will continue for how many more weeks?
Generally, we end up going until somewhere just before Thanksgiving. That was the plan at the beginning of the year. We will still see where we're at 2 weeks from now and make a decision with our contractor on when we're going to try and, because we got to let people know.
It's a really common question.
We got to let people know because they always start typically in the south end of the city and move north. So, there's always, somebody's got to be first and somebody's got to be last. So there could be a week between, and we get that call where people say, well, I wanted to put leaves out, you're up in the north end, but we can never get everybody all at once. So we do the best we can. And typically in previous years, we've made it work to the best of our ability.
Thank you.
Any other comment or question? Okay. Next is, we've already done 9, item number 10, pay estimates. I'll entertain a motion.
Move that we approve the pay estimates dated November 2nd, 2021. There are 13 items listed. I move we approve.
I'll second.
Okay, movement to approve the pay estimates by Mayor Smith, seconded by Sabrina Steger. Any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. Item number 11, adjournment.
Move to adjourn.
I'll second. I can't believe there was silence after that. All right, so movement to adjourn by Mayor Smith, seconded by myself, Alder Steve Knott. Any discussion? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes.
We're
Okay,
adjourned at
we are adjourned at 9:49. Okay, you're fast.